Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us here today for our annual Alberta Barley Director and Delegate session. Of course, we wish we could all be together in Banff in person today as part of the Prairie Cereal Summit, but of course that isn't the case, so we'll certainly be looking forward to next year's Prairie Cereal Summit and celebrating getting back to normal after what's been a very trying year. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Shannon Sarita, and I am charged with government relations and policy for the Alberta Wheat and Barley Commissions. In the past, our delegate and director sessions have focused on policy-specific issues. And this year, our policy chair and executive thought it would be timely to provide an update on the many new initiatives and outcomes that have taken place over the last year. So first, today, the chairs of the Alberta Wheat and Barley Commissions, Dave Bishop and Todd Hames, are going to provide us an update on the amalgamation efforts that are being explored as a result of our last Alberta Barley AGM. And then for the remainder of the time, I've invited my colleague, Lauren Common, who's Alberta Wheat and Barley's Director of Research, to lead a conversation on the changing research landscape in Alberta and Canada. And she will do that together with our General Manager, Tom Steve. So joining us for that conversation today will be many of our industry partners, including Stuart Collum from Olds College, Tyler McCann with the CSTA, Dr. Dave Chalik and Matt Sawyer, who have been heavily involved in the creation of the results-driven agricultural research organization. And at 2 o'clock today, we will also have Alberta's Minister of Agriculture and Forestry joining us to speak about the government's vision for agriculture and participate in a question and answer period. So you should have all received the full agenda in your emails from our events manager, Megan Evans. But before we begin, I'll cover off a few housekeeping items. So in order to try to be as interactive as we can throughout this session, we really are encouraging attendees to use the chat function. I think everybody knows how to do that, and I see there's already some chats going on in there, and please use the chat function to make comments or just say hello to let everyone know that you're on the call. And as Megan mentioned, just be sure to select the 2 attendees and panelist options so that everyone can see your message. Some of you had already sent in questions, but we encourage you to ask any questions you have throughout the session by using the Q&A button, which is just to the right of the chat function at the bottom of your screen. And we will be prioritizing questions here that are asked here first over the chat function. So that's important to remember. So we have a busy session today, and I know that my colleagues and our industry partners are going to do our best to get to all of your questions with the time that permits. But of course, following the session, if you have any additional questions, you can always reach out to the staff at the commissions. So I guess without further ado, I'll pass it over to the chair of Alberta Barley, Dave Bishop, and the chair of the Alberta Wheat Commission, Todd Hames, to kick off the session with an update to the amalgamation initiative of our 2 commissions.
Yes, thanks, Shannon, and good afternoon, everyone. As most of you know, Alberta Barley and the Alberta Wheat Commission moved to a combined management structure in 2018. This has resulted in significant synergies and cost savings for the commissions, estimated to be over $400,000 a year. While we have successfully integrated our management team, we continue to operate 2 separate commissions with 2 separate boards. In 2019, both the Alberta Wheat Commission and Alberta Barley passed motions at their annual general meetings to explore the idea of a formal merger, which would result in the creation of a single commission with a unified governance structure.
Thanks, Dave, for inviting me to this meeting. And so in late January of 2020, we formed an amalgamation subcommittee with equal representation from the 2 commissions to further advance this concept. To date, we have had 3 meetings of the subcommittee, including 1 face-to-face or partial face-to-face meeting in November in conjunction with the Alberta Wheat and Barley board meetings in Calgary. So next week, we're actually continuing on with that, and we'll be holding a 4th meeting of the subcommittee to further advance the discussion, including a workshop and a nuts and bolts, so to speak, framework with a series of proposals on what the combined organization would look like.
Yes, thanks, Todd. We will be sharing further information on the amalgamation process during the Alberta Barley AGM later this afternoon. But first, we would like to share a brief video of a recent conversation between Todd and myself. Following that, we'll be opening the floor to your comments and questions. So please cue the video.
Bit of a slate here real quick. You know, as a producer, I look at it as the fact that, you know, what can we do for value? And I can see the biggest value has happened as far as monetary. We've already accomplished that. I think the next step is to have a stronger voice, stronger farmer's voice. And in my mind, this is a great way to get that done.
So I think there's so much commonality in two organizations working together. We're stronger.
I agree. You know, I get a bit frustrated when I hear, oh, you're going to lose your voice. But if it's done right, nobody loses their voice. And I look at the examples of the Quebec grain producers, the GFOs, Atlantic Grains Council, BC grain producers. This isn't a new concept. Manitoba just went through it, very successful. It took them a while to get it done, but they've done it and it seems to be rolling along pretty good. So it's not like this is something that hasn't been done before and proven to work. Farmers are generally embrace change very well because they can see an advantage to growing. And so in my mind, this is what we're doing as we're growing.
The two commissions, the Alberta Wheat Commission and the Alberta Barley Commission, we're always working with many partners. We don't just work together as the two commissions, but you know, we have many partners in Alberta and many partners across the country, and our national partners are just as important on some issues as our provincial counterparts. And it's inevitable that we are collaborating with everybody that we can to get, you know, not only a stronger voice, but you know, it's resources. We're sharing our resource, whether it's money or people.
Well, that's right, Todd. You know, the fact that, you know, maybe another organization has a better skill set in their team than we do for doing certain things, and we're not afraid to, you know, to partner with other organizations. We do it today with you with Cereals Canada, us with the CMBTC, together with Grain Growers of Canada. Just some examples of where we partner with other organizations to help benefit the producer as a whole.
The story or the ask has to be the same across all farmers. If Dave and I come into the office, each with a different twist on it, the politician doesn't know how to respond to that, so he won't do anything.
Well, we were talking about what I think has been successful going on this year. It's a year nobody's ever seen before with the pandemic and that. And what I was really most happy and proud to see was the work that the staff continued to be able to do throughout this whole pandemic. And on the barley side, CBRC, which is 3 provinces getting together to do the cluster, you know, that was a big one. You know, there's been you know, just the growth of the whole industry as a whole, you know, and I believe that's partly to do with the works the commissions do with their marketing. Their communications is an important part of it, because without communications, we can't get what we've done forward to our producers to realize what's going on. You know, the agronomy side with Jeremy Boychin, you know, that's something neither one of us had until just recently. And that's something that I can see can continue to grow. It's something that we need to continue to keep growing and keep communicating to the producer, because that's important to them and they see the value in that.
And I kind of agree with Dave. I think, you know, there is a big win this year, and that is that we made it through 2020. Not in a win, it's a win in itself to be able to accomplish basically what that group would have done any other year.
Yeah, you know, and speaking of synergies, you know, you just look at the 2 crops, you know, the synergies that they have in marketing and research and communications, policy issues. Most of them are almost identical to begin with anyway. So, and the efficiencies I can see coming out of this is stronger voice for the farmer. You know, that's one very large value that I can see the farmer advantage of us coming together is the fact that we have one stronger voice. And we're already starting to see some of that today with the government coming toward asking us to do this and that, which, you know, we're almost, in my mind, to me, we look like we're the go-to commission for most of the government when they want to come ask us for an opinion or ask us for something to be done. They seem to be coming to ask us to do it. Maybe that's because we don't say no. I'm not sure, but I like to believe it's the fact that, you know, we are very efficient. We have a great staff, and we can do these things to benefit the farmer as a whole.
Okay. Well, thanks, Megan. I think there's some questions. Were there some questions set forward ahead of time? Maybe we should get right to that. Then we'll have some more conversation.
Yeah, so we did have a question that was sent in advance, and I don't see any questions popping up in the Q&A yet. So if others have questions, please do pop them into the Q&A, and we'll start with this one. So the question is, when does Alberta Barley and Alberta Wheat intend to establish governance rules like what we had back in 2003, 2008? So without a full set of governance rules and an annual review of goals and the performance of the general manager, the commissions could possibly not be doing its due diligence with respect to managing performance. They go on to say they realize governance sessions are laborious, but as board members, they're actually one of the only true jobs of the board.
Okay, well, I'll answer that to the best of my ability here. Like both Alberta Barley and Alberta Wheat have policies and procedures in place to deal with governance. It's always been there. It has never left. There's a code of conduct, a conflict of interest, there's confidentiality agreements, and expenses are all part of the governance package. In the case of Alberta Barley, we're overdue to do a governance training session again. And with 3 new directors coming on, I foresee that probably next year that'll be happening again. And it's something that we've always strived for, is governance to be proper governance. And so, you know, that's somebody to think that maybe that wasn't there. That's a bit disappointing. I'm uncertain where that came from, but you know, and also to continue that, in each year in August or September, the board chairs collaborate with the CEO to set performance objectives. The CEO's performance is then evaluated separately by each commission after the end of the fiscal year. Then the 2 board chairs get together to compare notes. Any changes in compensation are shared equally by the 2 commissions. And also, just in the last year, we've updated their director and delegate policy and procedure manual. So that's also been done. So, you know, we are very strong on governance.
Thanks, David. I would concur with that. I mean, we, especially in the, you know, the evaluation and process and setting goals every year, that is looked at. And the Alberta Wheat Commission just completed their 5-year strategy plan here last year. So we're continuing to work on that stuff, and it doesn't end.
So any other questions that are sitting there, Shannon?
Yeah. So thank you for that. So we have another question. So it sounds like you're moving towards an amalgamation. So what are the next steps?
Well, that's what the committee's for. We've got to look at what the pros and cons are. We've got to look at maybe how this would look like. That's why we've been looking at other organizations across Canada that have done amalgamation of some sort. That will be brought forth later in 2021. And the fact is that we're going to try and have, well, we're not going to try, we will be having pros and cons to amalgamation and be putting it forward to our delegates and our members to see what they think about it. Because at the end of the day, that's who's going to decide whether we merge or not merge. Or amalgamate, I should say. It's not really merger, it's amalgamation. But, you know, it's something that we've been asked to look at. We had 2 resolutions come forward last year, and so this is what we're doing. We were asked to do. So we're going to take a good look at this and then have a decision, you know, some articles out there that will be able to make an honest decision on what they can do in the future.
Yeah, well, I mean, I talked about the meeting next week we're going to have, and that will be defining some of the nuts and bolts as described. And, coming out with a little bit more substance as to what that would look like to the membership. And we'll be reaching out to the members as well when we get that more defined as to our, if there's an agreement amongst the boards or the committee to keep proceeding. There'll be ways that we're going to communicate with the members to get their insight on that, and for sure it's not a done deal. This is something that's a work in progress, and we want to make sure that we have looked at all options and the cost benefit ratio, of there's got to be some benefit to doing this, or there's no sense to go ahead. We're looking for that pros and cons, so we can make sure they're making the right decision based on facts and not emotion.
Yeah, that's right, Todd. At the end of the day, the committee is just going to supply the information to the members so they can make an informed decision, because that's who decides what happens for the future, whether there's any amalgamation or not. So.
Okay, well, thanks for that. So there was another question, I think you guys did touch on it in your last responses, asking whether the amalgamation is a done deal, which I think you've made clear it isn't, and there will be consultations with Alberta barley farmers. Are you able to elaborate for this person on what those consultations might look like?
We're still in the process of deciding how we're going to do the communication part of that. I mean, it's very important that we get this out to all the membership, and at the present time, we haven't really decided if it's going to be just meetings. We're not going to be able to do in person till later in the year, so it's kind of up in the air as to how it's going to happen, but it will happen. We can't do this without consultation. So,
yeah, and I think COVID is definitely threw a bit of a bump in the road for us to do those face-to-face interactions, but we're maybe a little further back than we really wanted to be at the process right at this time. But we're moving this forward with more information, and we'll move forward in some fashion of how we interact with the membership. And I mean, I hope that we can have some face-to-face time or where we can communicate with the memberships.
And also we hope to, in the new year, maybe have a bit of a time schedule as how maybe this will roll out, to give an idea of what the time frame to look at doing this is, and that'll be decided probably a lot of it in the next meeting next week. We'll be doing a lot of this. We're just in the beginning stages of figuring out where to go with this to communicate, and the timeline and what it might even look like. So that's the next week's discussion.
But one thing I think we can be assured, I mean, our goal is to move this forward or not. We're not going to let this drag out for a number of years to make a decision. Our goal is to really to move this along one way or the other. So I mean, I think by the end of by this time next year, there'd be a lot more clarity around this situation.
Yeah, that's right, Todd. The plan is to have this presented sometime next year to the membership to get their feelings on whether we should keep proceeding with this or just drop it, as the saying goes. So I think at the end of the day, we're trying to get our due diligence put forward to have all the information out there so our members can make an informed decision.
And if I could just weigh in for a couple of comments. So ultimately, under Marketing Council regulations, it will boil down to some form of a plebiscite, and how the actual structure of that plebiscite to be determined. If we have broad consensus amongst the commissions to go forward, that's one model. A province-wide vote would be one possible option, but we could also, investigate the idea of doing it at through our regional meeting process or our AGM processes. So we're exploring all of those things in collaboration with Marketing Council to make sure that all the voices are heard.
Okay, well, I think that wraps up. Oh, wait, 1 second here. There's one last question here before we move on. Any work that has been done to also bring on other commodities like oats, rice, etc. on board when and if this happens?
We've had just passing conversations on that. Our goal right now is to see if we can amalgamate Alberta Barley and Alberta Wheat. And I believe that will be a conversation to be had later on. I mean, I'm not saying it's not a possibility, but right now we're putting all our effort into seeing if we can get Alberta Barley and Alberta Wheat amalgamated into one organization or not. And then we will go from there. So
it's going to be, you know, up to those commissions or those organizations as well, you know, whether they reach out and, you know, and want to get more involved. And so far, to my knowledge, they have not. Is that right, Tom? I agree.
Tom's muted.
Yeah, sorry. You know, the Prairie Oat Grower Organization has a model in place that they're comfortable with, and it's prairie wide, so that could be a challenge. We did look at rye and triticale a few years ago, folding them into our structure, and the amount of checkoff revenue was so limited that it would cost us more to administer a checkoff for those crops than actually bring them into the fold. So, you know, there's a few nuances in that. Certainly, we fund triticale research, for example, but we don't have a formal commission for it. So there's a few moving parts in that conversation. I think oats would be a potential challenge, just off the top of my head, because of the structure that they already have in place.
Okay, we have, I guess, just one last comment. Maybe that'll end off this portion of the agenda. And just a comment to say that this person thinks we need more amalgamation to give strength to agriculture. So maybe we'll move past with that, leaving it on that thought. And I will introduce my colleague, Dr. Lauren Common, who's going to lead off the research portion of our agenda today.
Thank you, Shannon. Good afternoon, everyone. You'll notice I don't have the white background, so I do have the Christmas tree over my shoulder so that you all feel like you're at the Fairmont, the ultimate Christmas castle, as opposed to, you know, being in your house in your jammies watching your computer screen. So I'm going to talk a little bit about research, both provincially and nationally, and then we do have a few guests who will be joining us to elaborate on some of the topics that I discuss. Shannon mentioned, if anything crosses your mind in terms of a question, please do type it into the Q&A, because after each speaker, I will be checking that to try to get your question answered. So the research and innovation landscape for wheat and barley has been rapidly evolving, which obviously keeps people like me on our toes. There have been some big wins for producers in this area lately. The formation of the Canadian Barley Research Coalition and its sister, the Canadian Wheat Coalition, have signaled increased collaboration between producers across the provinces. This should be viewed very positively by farmers. There is strength in numbers. The two coalitions have funded national science clusters together and have recently announced partnerships with the University of Saskatchewan and Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada to support core variety development initiatives. For barley, these agreements are worth $2.73 million and $1.53 million over 5 years for the U of S and AAFC respectively. This funding will help to ensure a steady stream of new genetics makes it into the hands of farmers and gives us a seat at the table. helping us to provide direction to these programs. While we have worked with our partners across the prairies to support genetic innovation, we have also been working with our partners here in Alberta to bring stability to the research landscape. When the UCP took power in 2019, they promised that provincial research would take a farmer-led approach. Based on budgetary restrictions, we knew that that approach would also come alongside cuts. While participating in public consultations across Alberta, our commissions also collaborated with others in the crop and livestock sectors to provide some direction to the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry and ensure that farmers would feel minimal impact from the impending restructuring. The white paper on farmer-led research envisioned an arm's-length, farmer-directed research funding organization, a vision which paved the way for results-driven agriculture research, an organization that you're going to hear a little bit more about later. In terms of research capacity, we've advocated for public good programs to remain in the public research sphere, and for well-developed transition plans to develop sustainable programs, both in terms of funding and relevance to the farmer. Even knowing something is inevitable doesn't always make it easier to take. Over the last year, we have seen massive cuts to provincial agriculture capacity. In response, commissions and other industry groups have had to assume responsibility for initiatives like Agronomy Update, the Blue Book, and regional variety trials. Many research programs were transferred to existing institutions outside the ministry. However, they are far from out of the woods in terms of funding and resource challenges. One program that ended up in a new home and is especially relevant to barley producers is the Field Crop Development Center, the only barley breeding program in Alberta that has been focusing on Alberta's feed, food, and malt needs since the 1970s. Stuart Cullum, the president of Olds College, the new home of the program, will tell us about the vision for the program coming up. In the background, we have been active on a file that has been very contentious in the past decade, value creation, of course. Much has happened in this space. The government launched and then, of course, ceased public consultations. The Grain Growers of Canada and the Canadian Federation of Agriculture collaborated on producer principles for a successful system. And the seed industry announced a 2-year pilot program to trial the Seed Variety Use Agreement, or SVUA. So CSTA President Tyler McCann will now join us for a discussion on where the seed industry is at in their pilot program and what they're planning for the future. So welcome, Tyler. I see you are, oh, there we go, perfect. So Tyler does have a presentation, and after his presentation, we can do a bit of a Q&A. Thanks.
So I just need to turn this on, sorry, sure. Hopefully everyone can see this now. And so thank you very much for inviting me to speak to the summit today. Again, it would have been nice to join you in Banff, but I'm happy to join you virtually instead. So today I want to touch on two things. First, I'll talk about the pilot, the VUA, the pilot and the working group. But I want to spend hopefully most of my time talking about what the future holds and where we go on this file. At all times, if anybody's looking for more information, I encourage you to go to seedvaluecreation.ca, where you can get up-to-date information around the varieties that are in the pilot and the other work that's going on. Now, we did start in February at PGDC with an announcement of the pilot and the working group. We've covered a lot of ground since that time. We've made some small decisions like shortening the name to the VUA. It was felt to be a simpler, more catchy phrase than SVUA, so we now refer to it as the Variety Use Agreement and the VUA pilot. But then there's been a lot of work happening behind the scenes and to build the infrastructure. And again, this is one of the reasons why we wanted to do this pilot, was to really figure out, can we put the system in place? Can we do it in a way that's efficient? Can we do it in a way that reduces administrative burden? And so that's where a lot of the work being done by the Canadian Plant Technology Agency has been focused on. And so since February, CPTA's led on the development of the Platform Use Agreement, and that platform that's going to happen behind the scenes is what connects the breeding institutions, connects the retailers, connects the growers, and hopefully will facilitate a very simple exchange between all of those different parties. There have been contracts signed with retailers and producers so that, again, everyone has an understanding of their legal commitments that they're making. In the first year of the pilot, we did have 5 different varieties in it. There were 2 wheat varieties, 2 forage pea varieties, and 1 herbicide-tolerant soybean variety. And so there were some sales over the summer, but we will only really get our first taste of what how the royalty collection mechanism works on these varieties next year when growers make the decisions whether or not to save seed and plant it. And that will then trigger the VUA mechanism. The platform itself was still being built, so over the spring and this year, they've used an electronic document exchange, but a platform is coming online. And overall, we've got more than 35 retailers engaged into the process, a variety of seed grower retailers, and then independent suppliers. And so this is just a step in, the first step out with the system itself as we go out and again are piloting and testing. Looking forward on the pilot, we know that in the weeks, months ahead, there will be announcements of additional varieties. It's important for me to say that any of those announcements, any of those decisions are being made by the distributors and the breeding institutions. And so those announcements will come from them, but as those different distributors and breeding programs make those announcements, they will, they'll communicate it, and we'll make sure then that our website and other materials are updated. We will have the actual platform itself, the behind the scenes piece, will go live, hopefully in the near future. There's some training that's going to go to all of the users around it. So that includes the companies, the distributors, the breeding institutions, the retailers that are all involved in putting information into the platform. And then there's going to be communication, education, and outreach. And we know that this is really important so that everybody that's using the VUA platform, everyone that's using varieties that are under the VUA have a good understanding of what it means, what their obligations are, and how it works. So you can expect to see more of that as we go forward. Now, at the same time as the pilot was announced, we did announce a working group. We very much appreciate the membership that we have. We've tried to open it up so that anyone that was interested in becoming a member of the working group that was taking part in the discussions was able to come in and join us. We have a mix of growers, of seed growers, of commercial grain growers in the seed trade, producer commissions, and general farm organizations. We've got an independent breeder that's involved. We've got representation on both around the table from across the country and a variety of different commodities that are there. Again, we see this as more than just a cereals issue. So we've got pulses and flax and wheat and barley all at the table. We've had 5 meetings to date. I think the first 2 were really about setting the stage and getting the conversation going. I think everyone was doing some feeling each other out, and Lauren and others asked a lot of tough questions and at the beginning, but we were able to then get into 3 follow-up meetings where we dive deeper, and we've used the CFA GGC guiding principles as kind of the themes for the meetings. So we've had one that talked about the economic value, one about the dynamics, crop-specific dynamics, and then around ensuring an availability of options and variety deregistration. And so we've always tried to make sure that we have a very frank and open discussion, and so that everyone that's around the table has felt able to participate. I will say these are not official positions of the working group. These are my own perspectives around what the highlights of the discussion have been to date. I think broadly, we hear that there is an agreement that increased investment is a good thing, and that the status quo is not the preferred option, that we need to find a way to move this file forward. I think we've heard repeatedly that for the most part, growers don't have concerns with what private companies are doing with their private varieties. When it comes to value, that first value has got to be at the farm gate when farmers are deciding whether or not they're going to purchase these varieties. But we know there's significant interest in understanding what those sector-wide impacts are, how much money's being collected, where it's going. Again, I think we've heard when you talk about these crop-specific dynamics that this need for greater investment, the need for more activity applies across all crops. This isn't just a cereals issue. And that the VUA could work for all of those crops as well. We had good discussion around deregistration. I think that is something that has been a concern for everyone. We recognize that there's an opportunity to address it through the Seed Regulatory Modernization Initiative, and we encourage the commissions on Alberta and across the prairies to get involved in that process. I think that there's a real good opportunity to talk about this, but to talk about variety registration and seed certification and a whole bunch of other issues. So please take the opportunity to get involved. And we heard from the commission, the Canadian Grain Commission, that they've effectively taken variety reclassification off the table, that this was a one-time event that they needed to do. I think that that was very welcome news from everyone around the table. The concerns around reclassification are as much concerns for the seed industry as they are for growers. Now, we know that there's still a lot more work to do. We still have lingering questions about why that we're trying to deal with. It often comes up in every meeting, and so we're trying to have an ongoing discussion there. We recognize that public varieties are different. We need to find a different way to talk about them. And we know that there's diverse perspectives out there. We know that there's, we're not going to be able to convince everyone, but hopefully we could do a better job of setting the stage around how the VUA works, how it could work better, and how it can fit into the broader value creation discussion. We will be reconvening the working group, and we're going to talk about slippage and enforcement next. And I think it's in all of our interest to find the right way to bring Ag Canada into the discussion so they can be a partner there. But again, the VUA is only one piece of it. And so what I'd like to take some time to talk about briefly is how we look forward. We've often talked about value creation and the variety use agreement, but it's really important to understand that value creation is much greater than royalty collection, much greater than the variety use agreement. And we need to, I think, take a broader perspective. If we're really going to unlock the potential of value creation, we need to do more than just figure out a royalty collection methodology. So what is value creation? When you look at it a bigger picture, what's value creation? It's about increased competition, about better adapted varieties. We need better yield, improved performance, more innovation, and we need more breeders, more breeding programs, putting out more varieties. And I think if we think about value creation as more than just a royalty collection mechanism, it makes more sense. And there is the potential to deliver on all of these things. And these things are not just good for growers. They're not just good for the seed industry. They're good for the entire grain value chain. If we can figure out a way to really deliver on this potential, I think it's good for everybody involved. So in order to get value creation, we need to do more than just a royalty collection methodology. We need to do more than just the VUA. We need to figure out better ways to do our testing and trials. We need to figure out the plant with novel trait system. The government's going to launch consultations on this in January. Again, this is something that growers should be watching for. Variety registration comes up as a challenge that needs to be addressed. End user acceptance in barley is a really good example. There's no point of the seed industry turning out 15 new varieties a year if we can't get our end users using them. We've got this big question around public research. Lauren spoke about the challenges you're facing in Alberta. This could be an issue coming forward federally as well. We're concerned about it. Agronomics matters. Return on investment matters. And again, that's just not return on investment for the seed industry, that's return on investment for growers too. And ultimately that private investment then comes in and plays a big part of that as well. So what does the seed industry need to deliver on our side of value creation? What we need is a level playing field. And what we've seen over the last couple of months is that that's part of the equation that we're missing. We're missing out, we can't compete against other players. We can't find a way to really unlock the potential because, we're playing on one playing field, but Ag Canada with its subsidized breeding program, the funding coming in from growers through the commissions, this is all plays in together to create a place where private seed companies don't operate in the same circumstance, the same situation as the other breeding institutions. So if we go back to all of those things that value creation can deliver, in order for the seed industry to deliver on them, we need to figure out how to get to this more level playing field. Return on investment, a royalty collection system is one piece of that. But again, it's not the only piece of that. So when I look ahead, how do we go from the unlevel playing field? Again, I was trying to find a picture of the ruddy playing field, the ruddy field that we have today, to the level playing field that we're looking for, that again, that we think is essential to helping the seed industry derive value, get more value created throughout the value chain. Well, we've got a road to go on. And I think that there are 4 steps on the road, and I think that we need to effectively take those together. I think this is a seed industry grower commission path that we're on. I think we're in, whether we like it or not, I think we're in the car together. And so the first step is we need clarity from government. I think that's something that we probably all agree on, right? We need to know what the government, and Ag Canada in particular, is going to do on this file. Once we know that, we need to talk. We need to have the producers and the seed sector together, working together, engaging, talking about what the future holds. What is the potential around value creation? How do we deliver? What roles do we all need to play? And that's not something that we can do in our silos. I think we all need to work together on that piece. After that, we need to recognize, I think there's going to be a transition. And so, you know, we are where we are today. I think we have an idea of where we want to go in the future. But the path there is going to involve some give or take on both sides. And again, I think we need to recognize that. And you know, I think seed industry may want a shorter transition period than growers do, but that's part of the discussion that I think that we really need to have together as we figure out how to unlock this going forward. And ultimately, we need a plan for the future. And I think that we need to make sure that we're not in this space, which we potentially are today, where 15 years from now, we've got Ag Canada and the public breeding program that's effectively crowded out private investors. But in the meantime, the funding hasn't kept pace and that program isn't producing any results. And that's not in anyone's interest. So we need to make sure whatever system we put in place is going to ensure the long-term viability of the seed sector, of grain growers, of everyone that's involved, so that we continue to have a very resilient, successful, profitable system for everybody that's involved. And again, I think that there is a real opportunity for us to do that together. And so happy to take any questions that anyone has. Again, I think what we want to do is help people understand that this is about a bigger issue than just royalty collection. This is more, that's an important part of the puzzle, but there are a lot of other parts of the puzzle too. And really happy to keep this conversation going in the future.
Thank you very much, Tyler. And of course, we do have a few questions. I'm going to go to the Q&A first, and then I'll go into the comments because I do see some there as well. So the first question is, what is the mechanism to return the royalties back to the breeding programs?
So the short answer is that depends. And the long answer is the relationship between breeding programs and distributors are unique, and most of those agreements that are in place have that specify what that mechanism is going to be. Again, so in a private company, it's relatively straightforward how they'll manage that. But again, with Agriculture Canada, we know that their agreements today, the royalty certified seed royalties are already collected, even without a VUA, are already collected when seed is sold, when certified seed is sold. That seed is returned to Agriculture Canada. And then depending on the agreements that Agriculture Canada has with its funders, then that money, part of that money will go back to the funders, for example. So today, WGRF gets, I think, $2 million, give or take, back from Agriculture Canada as a result of the royalties it receives. So flowing those royalties really will depend, and it's ultimately will be influenced by the type of agreement that's in place between the breeding institution and the developer. But again, that there's a clear link there, and royalties aren't going to be in place without those details sorted out at the beginning.
Thanks. So a comment from Flavio, and I'm going to sort of paraphrase Flavio. So regarding variety acceptance, obviously that's very difficult and you don't really know until the variety hits the farmer's field. Even in Europe, where there's very large portfolios of varieties, usually there's only a few that make it to the top. So yes, of course, and obviously, especially with barley. I don't know if there's anything, if you want to make a comment on that, Tyler, or not.
Well, and I think the issue of variety acceptance will be, again, in barley, it's an acute problem today, but I think it has the potential, as we look at unlocking new breeding innovations, has the potential to be an issue for all commodities again. I think that the work being done in fields and in labs across Canada and around the world are going to put new technologies in the hands of farmers, and that could be herbicide tolerant wheat. Heaven only knows. I think that this CRISPR and gene editing is unlocking a lot of potential. I think there's a lot of things before then could be gluten-free wheat. These are things that are being worked on in the lab. And so the question is, if we've got these new technologies coming into the marketplace, do we have end user acceptance for them? So barley's got an acute challenge today, a systemic challenge. But then there's all of these other pieces that are going to come forward where, again, variety acceptance is going to be an issue. So it's more than just the barley issue.
So question from the comments, or the chat rather, why won't the CSTA endorse a capped royalty under a proposed new system?
So CSTA, no association, there are competitive issues around the amounts that are charged and how the decisions made by our members. So we cannot take a position that imposes a certain, puts limitations on competition in the marketplace and that impacts someone's ability to make commercial decisions. So we've said from all along that decision around about the cost of a royalty, how it's applied and how it's charged, is a decision of the breeding institution and the distributor. And so they will have the decision, they will be able to make that decision. I think that it comes back to a question around the economics, the value for money. That will all certainly influence the decisions that distributors make, but ultimately, because of those competition laws that are in place, this is not a position we take. We don't take any positions related to the cost of or the how that royalty is charged or calculated or assessed.
Thank you. One more question from the Q&A. This one's from Jason. So he obviously thanks you for your presentation. He has a question about the velocity of new varieties coming to market. How many new varieties do you expect commercial growers to grow on a yearly basis to provide adequate uptake for each of those new varieties to have adequate time for a full return on investment?
So it again, once again, depends, Jason. I think that's a good question, and it really, I think, depends on a lot of different circumstances, and will again depend on what the business model is behind the breeding institution and the distributor. You know, if we've got varieties that within a year or two go to 80% of the market share and then tail off, they may very well pay for themselves in a shorter time frame. If some of them are niche varieties, they may have a longer runway. But at the end of the day, one of the benefits of the VUA as a royalty collection model is that it's flexible that way, and it could allow companies to adjust their approach as they move forward. They can adjust the royalty rate and the terms of it, recognizing that it'll never be higher than what's originally decided. And so again, the short answer is that it depends, and it also does depend on all of these other pieces as well, right? If you can figure out ways to decrease the cost of bringing a variety to market, if we could tackle some other issues through seed regulatory modernization, for example, it might make it more affordable to bring varieties to market. It might make it more competitive for varieties to go into the market, and that's going to make it easier for private companies, to make that to fulfill that ROI that they need to, just as a grain grower needs to.
Thanks, Tyler. Are there any other questions from any of the audience before we move on to our next presentation? I will say, I do see another question, but you know, for our part, Alberta Wheat and Alberta Barley, we are both very involved in the conversation. We participate in the working group. We participate in the Grain Growers of Canada working group. So, you know, these are very much issues that we do deal with every day, and we do sort of have an active dialogue with Tyler and some of his colleagues on the seed industry side. So one more question here for you, Tyler. How will the royalties be distributed from seed breeder at public and farmer funded facilities in the future? And what are you talking about a level playing field? What are you talking about a level playing field? This person feels that you are wrong when you say that private industry can't compete with government. When you know you have companies like Bayer, Syngenta have really large yearly profits. Sorry, I was trying to read it as it would be said.
That's right, and good questions. Good questions that I'm happy to get, because I think we've got some good answers on the two of them. So the first question about royalties will depend on the agreements between the breeding institutions and the distributors. And so it's hard for me to say today what that model is going to look like. Again, I think it will be different even today under the existing certified seed royalties that are in place, under the different business models that different public institutions have. There's not a consistent approach So the CDC takes a different approach depending on the varieties that are involved. Canada has different relationships depending on the varieties that are there. So the shorter answer is it does depend, but that's a conversation. That's a negotiation, just like any other commercial negotiation between the breeding institution and the distributor. On the second point, there are companies big and small that are very profitable. There are not a lot of companies that are very profitable in the variety development space today. Again, I think Syngenta, I'm really happy that Syngenta that got mentioned, because Syngenta made a decision to get out of the Canadian marketplace. I think it says a lot to me about the commercial dynamics in wheat variety development in Canada, when one of the world's largest wheat breeders decided to get out of one of the world's largest wheat growing markets. I think that again speaks volumes to me, that when a company like that looks at it, they don't see a strong enough business case. And I know that today that probably didn't make much of a difference to commercial growers, but it does matter when you look at what's happening with public breeding institutions. If you want competition in the marketplace, if you want alternative choices, it's in all of our interest to make sure that a company like Syngenta can be viable. And it's not just about Syngenta. This is an issue for small breeders, right? We need to find a way to encourage independent variety development. This is something that happens in the rest of the world. We need to encourage more of it to happen in Canada as well.
All right, I think that is the last question that we have for you, Tyler. Oh,
It's okay. I wouldn't mind asking a question, Lauren. Sorry,
okay.
I didn't type it in.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead. A few.
Yeah, thanks for
up as well in the chat.
Thanks for coming, Tyler. It's great to see you again. My question is on your communications part. You mentioned you're planning on doing communications. How are you going to look at doing that? Do you have any idea how you're going to roll that out? Because I know the last go around, that was probably the biggest failure of the process, was the communications.
Yeah, I think, Dave, again, good to see you again as well. Hopefully we can see each other in person sometime soon. A couple of things on that. I think that there are, communications are on a different level. So we're CPTA and its members are going to be rolling out communications specifically related to the VUA, how it works, give people a better understanding of what the mechanics are of it. There's an education piece around it. But then I think we need to figure out how we better communicate on this broader value creation piece. And that's going to come at from a lot of different angles. And that includes things like in the seed regulatory modernization space, the seed sector, growers, others need to be talking about what we want out of a reformed regulatory system. And so there's, I think, a lot of more discussion, a lot more work that needs to happen together. And I do think we all recognize that the seed sector could and should have done a better job communicating the first go round. I think the dynamic with government involved, these things all have an impact, but the more communications we can do together in advance proactively, I think the better it is for everyone.
Thank you. And we have one more question. I hope you're game for it. I think this will be the last question before we do move on. How do you circumvent the farm's right to use farm-safe seed that's enshrined in legislation? And I believe that would be having to do with the SVUA.
Yeah, we don't. Farmers have their ability to continue to use seed. That's again, unless they've, so there are even outside of the VUA, there are contracts in place that are certified seed only contracts. That's ultimately up to the commercial relationship between the grower that they use, but the VUA protects a farmer's right to save seed 100%. The VUA model does that.
Okay, thank you so much, Tyler. I really appreciated you joining us today. I know it is a tough subject, but I very much do look forward to working with you on this subject in the future to try and create value in the space for the, obviously on my part, for the good of producers. So look forward to what 2021 brings in terms of the conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. And producer is good for this seed sector too. We're all in this together.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So now we are going to welcome Stuart Cullum. He is the president of Olds College. and the recipient of the Provincial Cereal Genetics Program, which is better known as the Field Crop Development Center. And he's going to talk about their vision for the barley breeding program. So welcome, Stuart.
Well, thank you very much, Lauren. I'll just pull up my presentation here and see if I can share the screen. All right.
You got it.
You can see it? All right. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you, Lauren, and to Alberta Barley for the opportunity to come in and share this exciting initiative and transition of the FCDC Field Crop Development Center to Olds College. We've been in conversations with Alberta Agriculture for some time on this, and I just want to start with the proviso that the transition is still in the works. And so we have an MOU in place, and we are working towards it, and it's going to happen imminently. It hasn't happened yet, so just want to make sure that that's understood at the front end. Also thought it would be useful to provide a bit of an update and an overview about Olds College. I think that I expect that the majority of the folks on the call today are aware of Olds College and probably understand our basic, mandate within the post-secondary system in Canada, but often the focus on the applied research is not as well understood. So I just like to provide that as a bit of a backdrop, and then I'll move into sharing where we're at with the FCDC transition. So just want to start with recognizing that about 3 years ago our institution established a new strategic plan. We believe in strong planning and strong visioning, and that plan was really built around that social purpose of transforming agriculture for a better world. It is ambitious sort of global perspective, and I think it represents the strength of the Alberta and Canadian agriculture sector as being also global leading. We want to play our role in that. In terms of our role, we are a sector-focused post-secondary, meaning that we are focused on agriculture and related fields, and our mandate allows us to award everything from certificates to baccalaureate degrees, as well as apprenticeship training. So we have our first baccalaureate degree in process in digital agriculture, expected to be launched in the next year or so. But as mentioned, while we're over 100 years old as a largely an education institution, we're around 20 years old as an applied research institution. And I realize that in the world of research that is still relatively young. However, we do have a couple of decades under our belt. And a lot of that research capacity is built around our learning enterprises. We're very, very fortunate to have an abundance of capacity for education as well as applied research, including our 2,800 acre smart farm. We've actually been able to increase our farm by around 1,000 acres over the last couple of years, and that creates tremendous capacity for supporting industry and supporting learning. And of course, within that farming operation, we have a diversified operation in livestock as well as crops. We also have a significant horticulture program that is bolstered by a pretty significant greenhouse capacity. And of course, as many folks know, we also have a brewery and a meat shop as well, a meat training center, which we're very proud of. In terms of our applied research areas of focus, you see them there. We have just in the last couple of years added technology integration as a core area of focus. And again, that's based on a lot of strategic planning and industry engagement, and recognizing that there was a great opportunity and a need to support an industry that is continually looking to apply and enhance the utilization of technology. And so this work in applied research has led to some important foundational pieces here at Olds College, including our smart farm. This has received a fair amount of attention over the last couple of years, and it has only actually been a couple of years. It was launched in June of 2018. Has seen some significant growth. We started basically on a quarter section, developing the foundational layer of technology, and it's now expanding to include our entire operation, which is now over 2,800 acres. We also recognize that we can only be successful if we engage industry and partners and our producer community, and we're very excited about the level of partnership that we've been able to garner and the support that we've been able to receive through those partnerships. As well, we are excited about the work that's happening. In 2020 growing season, we worked on 16 projects already, and so there's a lot of growth in the smart farm, and the project work is exciting. We also have some other areas of focus as well, including our crop production area. This is an important component that covers around 40 acres, give or take, depending on the year. The focus is on enhancing yields, improving weed control, seed genetics, nutrient density, and soil health. And in 2020, you'll note the stats. We had around 2,200 plots with 16 clients. And that spans Olds, Three Hills, and Brooks area. So it's a small area of research for us, but it's an important area. Another important area of research that I would say really was the essence of our smart farm. This is really where our smart farm was built out from, was our Technology Access Center for Livestock Production. So this is a federally funded program that was started in around 2015, 2016, again, focused on the needs of industry, particularly in terms of production efficiency, animal health and welfare, and environmental sustainability. And so we work very closely with our producers and as well as our technology developers and companies to really bring technology into the livestock space so that it can be developed, it can be tested, it can be scaled, and it can be demonstrated. And in 2020, you'll notice the stats there again. We're excited about the partnerships that we have with industry, with our producers, as well as with other research institutions in Canada. And again, this really is building on the concept that we have an ecosystem to leverage. We have a land base, we have an agriculture operation, and we have tremendous partnerships that we can leverage in order to support our industry and support our producers and support our learners. The concept is really about building an applied research environment that supports our industry and supports our producers, but also provides a tremendous learning platform for students. When we can put students in front of technology, when we can put students in situations where they're engaging with companies and producers, I think their learning only improves. So it's an exciting synergy between learning and applied research. So as we transition to the opportunity with the FCDC, which is a tremendous opportunity for Olds College, one that we take very serious, and we take with a great deal of responsibility. We recognize that the Field Crop Development Center has a long history and has a tremendous potential. And so we're very interested in ensuring that we steward that wisely. And one of the ways is by accessing other sources of funding. This is something I think that is now available to the FCDC that perhaps wasn't before. The fact that we do have access to various federal sources of funding, as well as a handful of provincial sources. Most of our funding at Olds College is federally sourced and industry sourced. We receive a little bit of provincial support, but the vast majority is federal funding, and so that's just something I wanted to put out there as an important sort of principle for FCDC's long-term sustainability. So moving on and talking about FCDC, and again, I want to just recognize that we're not there yet, but we very much look forward to having the agreement completed and having that transition completed early in the new year. One of the things, though, that we have recognized, and we've had a number of conversations, including with Tom and Lauren and Alberta Barley, is that there is a need for a new strategic plan, or a strategic plan, I think is the point. And we agree with that 100%. And so that will be the primary objective, or one of the primary objectives coming out of the gate, is the development of a strategic plan that's built around clear objectives and outcomes that really articulates an operational structure that works, that makes sense, driving towards a path that is about relevance, that is about sustainability, that's about producing value for producers. And so it's going to look something like this. This is an overview of our external review and strategic planning, and it does start with that external review and engagement. We recognize that before we build any plan, we need to reach out and understand what is needed, and so there will be a lot of work done on understanding the needs and the opportunities and doing that assessment, and engaging our stakeholders, which includes industry, producers, as well as the research community and the granting agencies. This external review will be led by Paul Thiel. We're excited to have him on board with us to lead this, and he will chair a steering committee made up of around 10 members that represent key stakeholders. And we want to ensure that there is a strong producer voice on that steering committee, and so there will be at least 3 producers on that. We're also excited that Alberta Barley and the University of Alberta have already confirmed to be on the steering committee, which is important. And I think what we recognize is Olds College's success has been born out of partnering and will continue to be. And so FCDC's ability to connect and partner with the research capacity that exists within the province and in Canada is going to be critically important. And so having that representation around the steering committee is also very important. So the target date for publishing and presenting the strategic plan will be September 21. And
Stuart, I just wanted to jump in here. I have been told that the minister has joined us, so I just have been asked to introduce the minister, and
sure.
Maybe we can jump back to FCDC in just a moment.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to welcome the Honourable Minister Devin Dreeshen, who of course is the Minister of Agriculture and Forestry here in Alberta. And Devin can join us today for a short time to just bring greetings from the ministry, as well as to discuss some of what his ministry has been up to, and including the topic that Stuart has just mentioned, FCDC. So welcome, Minister Dreeshen.
Lauren, do you want me to continue, or are we giving the minister an opportunity?
I think I've been asked to give the minister an opportunity if we can, but I'm not sure if he's on mute.
Yes, isn't technology wonderful, everyone? So I guess due to technical difficulties, we will be a few minutes.
I could hear him.
There we go.
There we go.
Stuart, do you
Can you
mind
hear?
sharing your screen?
Can anyone hear me now?
We can, yeah.
Yeah, we can.
Oh, perfect. I don't know. I could hear Stuart drone on and on, so I was weird that I couldn't speak. Just kidding. Thanks, Lauren, and Alberta Wheat and Barley for the opportunity to speak to you today. Obviously, a lot of you have have met me already. It's almost been 2 years now. And just some highlights for the industry so far this year that you guys already probably know. Agriculture has been the leading force for Alberta's economy. It was a bright spot. It was an essential service that we deemed early on throughout this pandemic that hit early this year. And when you look at all the other sectors in the province, agriculture has been a bright light in our economy. So that's something that from the Premier, the Cabinet, the entire government, recognizing the importance of it. And a big significant investment that we made earlier this year was a large irrigation play down in southern Alberta, $815 million going into about 200,000 new irrigated acres coming into the province. It's the biggest of its kind and a significant expansion, which we hope will have significant value-added processors coming into the province. And it really just, again, will have that exponential growth of value-added products and production and more job creation, more investment coming to the province. So it's agriculture is a definite highlight, especially during a very tough year. And so I just wanted to thank all the farmers out there for everything that they've done to be able to make this very dark year a little bit better. So on some other highlights, and I know Stuart was going into on the research side, and with the 3-year funding commitment that we gave to Olds College to take on the breeding program at Lacombe. It's the $10.5 million grant over 3 years, which really will allow that barley breeding program in the Field Crop Development Center to really continue on with the important work. And when we were restructuring our research, how it's conducted here in the province, we wanted to make sure that it was something we campaigned on, but also we wanted to make sure that farmers were leading research priorities in the province. And with the creation of Ardar and the leadership of Dr. David Chalik, and Tom Steve, we have seen a tremendous uptake of that really difficult decisions of trying to make research priorities, the right research priorities. And but we really think we struck a great balance with Ardar to be able to make sure that happens. So the $37 million a year agreement over 10 years, so $370 million going into agriculture research. That's more than the other prairie provinces combined when it comes to public research dollars. And then just the multiplier effect of having more research done here in Alberta. Then obviously the $3.7 million to the U of A to take on some researchers within the next 3 years, University of Lethbridge and Lethbridge College, as well as so that's about $3.8 million, and then $3.4 million to the University of Calgary to take on some more research dollars there. So whether it's research and just the new possibilities for agriculture being such a priority and importance is something that we were focusing on. Also, just irrigation and that exciting new play. There's always going to be regulatory fixes and changes within the Agriculture and Forestry Department, as well as other departments and federally as well, that we need to work on, as well as BRM changes as we actually are going into the negotiations for the next framework. So the 5-year BRM framework is set to expire in 2023. And we've actually set by next July, we have a commitment to look at a replacement program to agri-stability, something that we've seen agri-stability about 6,000 farmers from its peak about 6 years ago. 6,000 farmers have left agri-stability, average about 1,000 plus a year. And we want to make sure that even agri-stability in its original form wasn't a bankable, predictable program. And so that's something that we want to make sure that the replacement program for agri-stability that can have some of the strengths of crop insurance built into it, where it actually pays out at the end of a growing season. We want to have margin or revenue decline insurance, essentially, that farmers and ranchers and any producer could be able to go in and select the margin decline coverage that they would like. So that's what we're developing right now, working with the other provinces and the federal government to see if we can get national support on that. And we really do think that'll be a replacement for agri-stability, something that would be actuarially sound and obviously be more responsive and timely for farmers. So that's, when things go bad, to make sure we have a BRM program and the suite of programs that are there to protect farmers. research being our forward looking and trying to grow and expand the economy, as well as big irrigation plays and our $1.4 billion investment in growth strategy that we have for anything from a canola crush plant to another feedlot or to another processing capacity, a slaughter facility, and everything in between. And so that is something that we are looking at, more innovative investment opportunities for value-added production to be here. So we're not just sending raw materials on a train to a boat that gets shipped around the world and then turned into a value-added product. We want to do more of that here within Alberta. So that's kind of some highlights of the year. Obviously record crop, not everywhere in the province. Obviously there were some really tough areas that got hit and multiple years got hit hard now. But overall, we had a record crop come off. Commodity prices are strong. I know people keep bragging about their feed barley prices that were more than what I got. But anyway, we won't go into that. But happy to take any questions. And again, thanks everyone for having me here. I wish we could do this in person, obviously, but I appreciate the opportunity to address you, and happy to take any questions now.
Well, thank you, Minister Dreeshen. It's Dave here. I'm glad you could make this. It's important, I think, for us to be able to chat with you. And I'll roll off with the first question is, can you provide an update on the province's perspective on Minister Bibeau's proposed change to the business risk management systems? Ourselves and other commodity groups, including beef, are in favor of this change in the interim until we do get a new set of programs that you were talking about earlier.
So, it's a loaded question. So right off the bat, it was unfortunate that in a 2-week FPT meeting that no province knew what the federal government actually had got approval for until about an hour before the final communique and the end of the meeting. So that was frustrating, of this last minute deal that was just sprung on the provinces to say, well, do you want this or not? Which it would be impossible for provinces to actually go out and get cabinet and treasury board approval to actually even make it work. So that was extremely frustrating. We thought that was not something that if they were looking to have a deal come out of that FPT, that's not the way one would do that. So we expressed that frustration. Obviously, there's financial concerns. It would be about what was finally on the table from the feds would be about $20 million to the province, to just the provincial part of agri-stability. But then here's the rub though, is any changes in agri-stability for 2021 would essentially be paid out in 2023 because of the lagging effect of how agri-stability is based on your end of years tax returns, and then takes all the processing time and takes about 2 years to actually pay out. So if any changes to 2021 were to occur, it takes about 2023 before they would actually be paid out. And on the backdrop of all of that is, behind the scenes, is this July, we're actually going to be looking at the next framework, which comes into place in 2023. So we've kind of been bucking the notion that somehow there's a short-term fix to agri-stability versus a long-term fix to BRM programs, when they're actually going to land at the same time, essentially the same time. So that's something that we don't want to just fix agri-stability and say that we got it. We want to make sure that we can develop a new agri-stability that actually, again, is bankable, timely, and predictable. So that's the direction that we're going on. We'll see what the other provinces do if they can find the money, but everybody on this call knows that our financial situation is very bleak in Alberta. We typically have about a $55 billion budget every year. We are clocking in over $20 billion deficit this year alone. So, and next year isn't looking very good either. So our fiscal capacity isn't very good. However, we still dole out over $300 million in BRM programming and farm supports every year. And that's something that I want to make sure that we're still doing it in a bankable, timely, and predictable manner, to still having farm support programs. But to make changes to agri-stability, I don't think it's fair or equitable for all the commodity types that are looking for a new and improved agri-stability. And that's something that we're just focusing on as a government.
Thank you, Minister. There is a follow-up question to Dave's question, which is on BRM short-term changes.
Sure.
Are any program changes to the 2020 and 2021 year, even though there is a lag, if I receive a payout as a farmer, is it still a major benefit? It is still a major benefit to my financial position on my books and in terms of accounts receivable. Will you consider the short-term change offered by BBO?
Yes, that we will consider it. It is something that we have to, again, get it approved by Cabinet Treasury Board. We actually just wrapped up the legislature, what was it, how many hours ago? 11 hours ago, about 3 o'clock in the morning. So that's something that, you know, we can obviously next Cabinet and Treasury Board try to get that on the agenda, as I know other provinces are doing as well, to see if that would hit. But again, we're not going to give up on trying to improve agri stability, because we do truly think that that's the best way going forward, because we have an opportunity to make the next 5-year framework actually work for all commodity types. And when you crunch the numbers on agri stability, it's interesting of the types of operations of agriculture commodities that agri stability actually favors. If you're a high cost, tight margin type of commodity like a feedlot, agri stability almost pays out to everybody that applies to agri stability. And then when you look at cow calf guys that farther down the scale, it rarely pays out. Grain farmers also even less than cow calf. And then you go down to beekeepers and other commodity types, it rarely ever does. So agri stability in a program, even with these changes, it's not an equitable program that treats all commodities fairly. And again, it's not timely, bankable, or predictable, because you have no idea what you're going to get at the end of the day, unlike crop insurance, which again hits all those. And so we want the next program to be more like crop insurance.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go back to research now, which is obviously my comfort zone. With the ministry's recent cuts to agricultural research funding and capacity, and the transfer of programs outside of the government, what is the accountability of the ministry to ensure these third-party organizations, such as Olds College and the University of Alberta, are accountable when they take over responsibility for these portfolios? So speaking a bit about the success of the future programs.
Well, it's all up to Tom Steve to make sure there's accountability. No, that's obviously, it's funny, $37 million a year annually to agriculture research by the province of Alberta is more than Saskatchewan and Manitoba combined when it comes to research. So a notion that we as a province aren't funding agriculture research is, I think, wrong, because we are actually funding at a higher level. And the transfers that we made than the other provinces, but the transfers that we made to the U of A, to Olds College, to Lethbridge University and College, as well as the University of Calgary, they have research programs as post-secondary institutions. So being able to have this leveraging opportunity to have agriculture and forestry researchers go into the post-secondary world, to use their labs, to have teaching opportunities, to grow and expand their own research, and also train the next generation of researchers. It's a really good, healthy spot for these researchers to be, and something that, you know, we put our money where our mouth is. Of the 10.5 million to go to Olds, the 3.7 million to go to the U of A, the 3.8 million to go to Lethbridge College and University, and 3.4 million to go to the U of C. And that's over and above the $37 million annually that Ardar gets, and the priorities research that it's going to determine on. So the accountability measure is, we have in the 37 million annually transfers that we give to Ardar, there is accountability measures in there, so Tom doesn't go on big elaborate vacations. But it is something that there is accountability, but they are actually arm's length, and they're Ardar and its board and all the feedback that they get from the industry is that's where the decisions and the priorities are ultimately going to be made.
Thank you. Another research question. So in light of the Alberta Agriculture and Forestry exit from agricultural research, is there any consideration being given to fund projects that fall into the never land between being true research and support of the industry? Some examples are given here, the Alberta Blue Book, regional variety trials, and the Leduc processing facility.
So the Leduc processing facility, we actually just announced a $25 million expansion into its in a capital grant. So their incubator is now up to, I think, 10 bays with this grant. And obviously it's the building blocks of trying to have value added processors and new companies do more with the food products that we grow or we raise. So that is something that the Leduc Center is fantastic. It's a lot of big successful companies have had their origins there. We got a tour of it last year and just saw these amazing entrepreneurs that are really trying to incubate and figure out how they could launch their company with Alberta made products. So the Leduc Center is fantastic and something that we support, and we again have given an additional $25 million capital grant to expand that facility. So that's extremely important. And above and beyond all the post-secondary transfers that were provided over the next 3 years for all those programs I just listed, and on top of the $37 million annually that is going to go to Ardar and the 10-year agreement that we have with them, so over $1/3 billion over 10 years, there is also CAP grants that can also go out to research projects or to individual projects as well, that is also available on an annual basis.
Thank you very much. So I have a question here that could be either for you, Minister Dreeshen, or perhaps Stuart, or perhaps you could both chime in. So funding for the field crop development.
I thought Stuart was gone. That's why I was teasing him.
Oh, sorry, he did hear that. So funding for the Field Crop Development Center has been dropped from what it needs to operate. So, you mentioned the $10.5 million over the 3 years. Typical operating budget for those who aren't aware of FCDC is just over $4 million a year. So how is Olds College going to run FCDC if the funding isn't sufficient?
If Stuart wants to take that, but it's our impression that Olds will be able to carry on that over the next 3 years for the Field Crop Development Center, to make sure that any type of barley varieties, any type of research that was actually in demand for the industry, that research would continue. But I don't know, Stuart, if you have any more specific details on that.
Yeah, no, Minister, you're right. I think that we, in the conversations and discussions that we've had with your ministry, we're confident that we can operate the FCDC within the budget allocation that's been provided. So that's something that we're confident in. And I'd also note, we recognize that part of the FCDC's success is going to be how it is able to acquire other sources of funds. So we're very grateful for the significant investment by the Alberta government towards FCDC, $10.5 million over 3 years. And we'll be aggressively looking at how we can leverage that with other sources of funding, federal dollars, industry dollars, and whatnot. So it's not a limited pool of funding. It's about growing that pool.
You're going to need a bigger sign, Stuart.
Absolutely.
But that's another great point of research isn't just provincial research. It's collaboration. It's leveraging other dollars and organizations to actually make it work. So it's not a zero-sum game from a provincial standpoint.
Thank you very much. We do have another question on BRMs. Would there be an opportunity for grain producers to have their crop insurance enhanced through AFSC as a BRM option?
Yeah, it is something that are in the kind of shadow boxing we were doing with the federal government for the last year or so on BRM changes. Something that was floated around was actually a reduction in crop insurance. It's one of the more expensive programs of the 60-40 insurance premium share. So farmers have 40% of the premium, 60% by the provincial and the federal government. 36% is the feds, 24% is the province. I think that works out. And that's something that we were concerned that the federal government was going to look at reductions in crop insurance to possibly subsidize the $100 million plus agri-stability change. So that was something that we were concerned of, and we fought hard to say that crop insurance is fantastic, don't make any reductions to it. However, to the question of can you actually improve crop insurance, it is something that we are looking at right now to see how we can make crop insurance even better. And it's something that, we look for industry feedback or red tape reduction ideas of how we can A, make the form simpler, or B, make it more responsive to specific needs. But happy to improve crop insurance. However, I am very supportive of crop insurance because I do think it's the best business risk management program that is offered right now.
Well, thank you very much, Minister Dreeshen. We really appreciate you joining us today. And on behalf of Alberta Barley, I'd like to thank you and say happy holidays to you. And now that you'll be exiting, we can go back to Stuart and perhaps he can make some quips while you're not here.
I'll hear about it later, Stuart. But no, thank you so much, Lauren, and everyone for having me.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
Bye.
All right. Now, as the egg industry is very good at doing, we are now going to pivot back to Stuart Cullum, the president of Olds College. So Stuart had been talking to us about the Field Crop Development Center and some of his plans and their plans to do a review. So we're now very much looking forward to moving into their vision for FCDC, and we already have some questions in the Q&A ready to go for Stuart when he finishes his presentation. So Stuart, if you could share your screen again.
Okay, can you see it, Lauren? Thought I had.
I can see you.
Oh, okay. I might have messed that up. Let me try. Oh, here we go. There we go. Can you see it now?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, and I was near finishing anyway, so we can certainly pivot back to the questions relatively quickly. I just want to quickly touch on a going forward basis. One of the questions that was probably naturally coming to people's minds is, so what's FCDC going to look like in 2021? And I would just note that 2021 is going to look very similar to 2020 because we need to ensure that we do that proper industry engagement, external review, and strategic planning. And so the center will operate on a similar basis. And we will be entering into that first year of the 3-year funding commitment with the transition to a new operating model based on that external engagement and strategic planning in 2022. So that's really the end of the presentation, Lauren. I'll stop sharing. And one of the questions that I think I did see was a question about what happens after 3 years, and that's a really good question. So we recognize that part of the FCD's sort of future sustainability and viability is going to be about long-term funding. We recognize 100% that breeding programs need long horizons, and so there's a lot of incentive, I think, on all parties, Olds College and the stakeholders here today, to see a long-term funding framework really for the FCDC. And so that will be our intention, is to ensure we build a strong plan, an operating framework, and a vision for the future that's going to ensure that groups like Ardar and others see the value and see the rationale for ongoing funding. So I'm happy to take any other questions you might have.
So we do have a few more. One is on the facility in Lacombe. So obviously FCDC, the barley genetics program mainly operates out of Lacombe. Olds College is of course in Olds. Can you comment at all about the future of that facility and whether or not that will become an Olds College campus?
Sure. So FCDC will remain in Lacombe. We gain access to the facilities. The assets are actually still staying with the province. We're taking over the program itself, but the FCDC will remain in Lacombe where it should be. But there's opportunities, of course, to extend the work of FCDC, to Olds and to other places as well. So we see that extension opportunity, but FCDC will remain in Lacombe.
So another location question. You, in your discussion prior to the minister joining us, you discussed FCDC operating out of 3 sites. Can you please repeat the sites and also discuss any plans for including more northern sites in the Olds College program? And this is actually coming from a farmer from the piece. So I'm sure if you have any ideas for sites there, he would love to hear it.
Yeah, well, I think, so just to be clear, we have crop production research, applied research at Olds College, which is in multiple sites. That's not FCDC's. That wasn't actually referencing FCDC. But I agree that there is opportunity to extend, applied research in this space across the province, and we should be looking for those opportunities. But FCDC's site is in Lacombe. So again, I would just come back to the opportunity to collaborate and do work across the province is certainly something that we'd look at.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions at the moment for Stuart, unless anyone has a burning question that they are quickly trying to type. Thank you very much, Stuart, for joining us, and apologies for the interruption, but I think maybe it did give you a bit more time to talk than we had previously planned. So, we're on behalf of the barley industry, again, thank you very much. We're very excited about engaging with Olds College in the future. And obviously, it's also our goal to make that program, the barley breeding program, successful and sustainable for producers. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. We appreciate the support of Alberta Barley. We see Alberta Barley and the team as key partners to this. So we look forward to the months and years ahead.
Perfect. Thank you. So I'd now like to turn the controls over to Tom Steve, who is the General Manager of the Alberta Wheat and Barley Commissions. He also happens to be the Vice Chair of Results-Driven Agricultural Research, or Ardar, which we have referenced several times, and the Minister referenced several times as well. So I would turn the controls over to him to chat about the new funder's role in Alberta.
Well, thank you very much, Lauren. And yeah, I'm very pleased to be able to host this session with two of my colleagues. Number one, Dr. David Chalik, who is my counterpart, the chair of the Results-Driven Agriculture Research Organization that we started on in early April of 2020. I think it's our 16th board meeting that we're having on Friday of this week, and Dr. Chalik has been a tough taskmaster, but he's also a huge part of the reason that we're where we're at today in terms of the progress of this organization. Also on the line we have Matt Sawyer, who is well known to this group. He is a past director and chair of Alberta Barley and has been involved in numerous other organizations, including the Western Canadian Wheat Growers. I'm going to be facilitating a short dialogue with both Dr. Chalik and Matt a little bit later, but we wanted to give you a brief overview of Ardar. It's, in my opinion, and I've been involved in a lot of startup projects over the years, I'm very proud of the fact of where we have come from and where we are at in terms of the development of this organization. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Chalik to give you a brief presentation, and then we'll get into questions, first from me and then from the rest of the group. So over to you, David Chalik.
Great. Well, thank you, Tom. It's really an honor to be with you. I see we've got some 92 participants, and to share the podium with another colleague, Matt Sawyer. I find it interesting that, of course, we heard from Minister Dreeshen and Tyler McCann, both of whom I had worked with previously in Jerry Ritz's office. So it's a small world indeed. For transparency, I'm more of an expert on the livestock side than the crop side. However, if you're involved in livestock, you know about crops. And that's one of the great opportunities for Ardar, is representing both vibrant sectors on that. You're getting to witness as participants here the new stylized logos, etc., that Ardar and the communications group have established on this PowerPoint. And I've had a great deal of success, or great deal of support from Megan, who is going to advance the slides on my behalf. So the title, I think, is important. Accelerating Alberta's agriculture. That's a good phrase. I like our logo. If you take a look down at the bottom, it could be thought to be leaves or strips of DNA. And then on the lower right, the winding road to success. Or it could be furrows in a field or whatever. Next slide, please, Megan. So Tom already alluded to the fact that this was established around the end of March by the minister. Certainly the entity, and as the minister said just earlier, this was somewhat of a political initiative, given what had happened in the previous government of the NDP, basically closing down the the livestock organization ALMA, and more on the crop side, ACID-F. So at any rate, the producers, were not happy with everything being returned to government. And so I think as part of their platform and with all the consultancy that was done, Ardar was hatched and unveiled. It certainly is intended to be arm's length. And I would say all the directors work very in a focused way to ensure that we are certainly farmer-led, not for profit, and focused on research. And of course, it is agricultural industry-led, the research priorities. I was appointed as interim chair. When we use the term interim, though, every director that's on that board is operating as they should, with the importance of being a director. Some of them may be permanent directors. You'll see that we have a path forward where elections could be the first part of March. But I found it very interesting, the focus that Todd Hames and Dave Bishop had on good governance. And that is critically important. And I thank them for the emphasis on that. So we were appointed by the minister. None of us went looking for the job, but I think we all enjoy it. Somebody previously also mentioned proudly that the Alberta Barley Commission is a go-to entity and a well-trusted entity, and thereby they supervised the startup grant that we got for $2 million through the CAP program. Next, please. Some of the names you may recognize. Of course, you wouldn't recognize me, but Tom is so well known, I think he should run for Prime Minister. We've got Matt Sawyer, we've got Brian Otto, Kelly Smith-Fraser, who is currently the chair of the Alberta Beef Producers, Dr. Stan Blade, Dean of U of A, Vance Uremko from SARDA, Nicole Neuenbauer, who is from the Medicine Hat area, and Melissa Downing. So you see there's great regional representation, gender representation, and all of the folks very, very capable. Next. You know, when you're setting up an organization or going to work for an organization or you're joining an organization, it behooves you to look at the mandate. And we spent a lot of time with input from stakeholders developing the mandate and the vision. And every activity that an organization does should be focused on and responding to or enhancing the mandate and the vision. I think you can read them, but I'm going to take a quick moment, Tom and Matt, just to do it, that the mandate is to support results-driven agricultural research priorities and programs that will increase competitiveness and profitability of Alberta's ag industry. Just a note on that, there was some discussion by some of the stakeholders that we should really be having used the term sustainability. Of course, we believe in sustainable production practices. You'll see that in the research priorities. But if you're not competitive and if you're not profitable, you're not sustainable. You won't attract investment. You won't have that generational transfer of businesses and the next generation wanting to be part of it. So a big focus truly is competitiveness and profitability. What I like about our vision, or the forward-looking piece, is the term that we're charged with helping the sector achieve their full potential. Alberta has so much potential. Again, the minister talked about it with all the irrigated land, the value-added opportunities, just our geography and climate. It's a wonderful place to be involved in agriculture. Next, please. This is an important governance clarification and education, if you will. Both barley and wheat commissions are part of the membership. In a for-profit organization, they might be called shareholders, but there are the boards and commissions, 12 industry associations, and 2 of the ARAs that are represented. And that same group are on the advisory committee, plus 7 post-secondary institutions. And we'll differentiate the roles and responsibilities of those folks. Next, please, Megan. So you as Ardar members have a very, very important role. And the primary role, of course, is to elect the board of directors. It is the board that then sets the strategy, that then directs staff, but you also approve the bylaws, and those have been circulated, and we've used a great consultant, Adrian Wohler, to craft those bylaws. That's the framework from which we will go forward, and really sets the recipe for how we operate. You will receive the financial statements and appoint the auditor. The advisory committee is exactly that. It's advisory. It does not have any decision-making power, but it does recommend the research priorities. And I can tell you that your general manager, or Tom, I'm not sure what the terminology is, it changes, but Tom Steve has guided how we work with 50 stakeholders in that framework. He is our vice chair of the board, but he is co-chair and currently the only chair of the advisory committee group. And that group is extremely important. Their advice is taken seriously. They make recommendations to the board on research priorities. That goes to our board governance committee, the research committee. And then they will review our Ardar performance metrics. We need to deliver results. And if we're not accountable and don't deliver results, we will not get that funding of $37 million a year, ultimately. And so we've just finished our business plan. The KPIs are in it. And keep an eye on what those KPIs are. Next, please. The research priorities that came out of all of the various consultations, many of them, is enhanced productivity, profitability, and competitiveness, sustainable and responsible agricultural production. Thirdly, the market demands food safety, quality, value-added products, and diversification. And then it was made very aware to most of us that extension and knowledge transfer is critical. If research just sitting on the shelf doesn't help anyone, it needs to be incorporated into your farming practices to improve your profitability, efficiency, competitiveness. So those are the 4 research priorities. You might say that they are quite broad, but within that there will be focus in research calls, and I think they're very appropriate. Next. The idea when this was first started was to get money flowing, and Tom said we've worked very, very aggressively to timelines, and it's amazing how time flies. It's amazing what we've achieved with COVID, but here we are already in December. We have placed our first call for funding in October. We did shorten the process. That doesn't mean there's not a lot of due diligence with peer review, etc. And we hope to make funding decisions by mid-December or early January. Next, please. Just a brief review of that call. I think you'd find this very interesting. The 4 targeted calls: soil quality and health, and within that, more focus on the living nature of soils, the biome, maybe versus the chemistry. There were several individuals that brought that forward: water quality and efficiency, feed production, and pests and diseases. We had 117 proposals for more than $33 million. There's a great appetite, more appetite than we have funding. These will be awarded on a merit base. We're also continuing to work with all the research proposals through the Ag Funding Consortium. Tom mentioned that we're having our next board meeting on Friday. Just to correct Tom, it's our 17th actually, but out of 16, that's not a bad list. Next, please. And there you have it. Thank you. Look at that soil in the hands of a producer, and the ultimate is the beautiful swaths of, I guess it would be wheat and barley that we're seeing in the slide there. So that's it, Tom. It's been an enjoyable process. It's gone by in very rapid terms. We've enjoyed working with the minister and all of the producers, and we are ready to deliver. Okay.
All right, Dr. Chalik, and you see Matt Sawyer on the screen as well, and a great synopsis of where we've come in a very short time with this organization. And again, a credit to the board of directors, to the interim management team, to the consultants that have been a part of this process. I'm going to throw the first question to Matt Sawyer because he's a grain producer primarily, although somewhat involved in cattle, I believe. But we have a very diverse board. And Matt, I just want to ask you, you know, in terms of the balance that we're dealing with in terms of the overall research portfolio of the government of Alberta, I mean, it's a huge task. And I just want to get your observations on, you know, how you're weighing all of that from your perspective on the farm at Acme, Alberta. It's a big job, and I, you know, from my perspective, I'm in the same boat. I'm mainly on the grain side.
Yeah, it was a big job. I guess you look at the Ardar, our Class A members, our voting members, and primarily the different associations and producer groups and commissions that are on there, and also seeing some of the proposals that have come in. You know, it's some of it, you know, going back to tracking bees all the way up to, you know, what to avoid diseases in chickens. I mean, it's a very diverse, of course, we know it's a very diverse situation, agriculture industry that we have in the province, and having to build something that was accountable and transparent to all the different members and all the different agriculture producers in the province. It was, you know, it was a task. And going back though, I think everybody does remember the farmer-led research discussions that we had, and seeing how the government responded to that to come with an idea to create this you know, program that we were able to call Ardar. And basically, you know, for us, that started with the call from Andre Tremblay saying, would you be interested, Matt, in talking about results-driven ag research, or, you know, would you be interested in talking about that? And I said, absolutely. Of course, I didn't realize at the time when I was talking to him, I was speeding and talking on the phone. So that got me a distracted driving ticket plus a ticket. But anyways, at the end of the day, it was an absolute pleasure to be part of this group. And if, like you said, that short time frame, we were given a mandate. We were given a mandate to build this program that was responsible and transparent to all the members of our industry, across the province. 8 months, and we did it from April to October. 17 board meetings, umpteen governance meetings and research meetings, and putting it all together. It was an amazing experience. I really enjoyed it. And of course, we always enjoyed our chair getting after you, Tom, or Steve, as he'd like to call you. But it was any different type of challenge that you take on is you always learn something. And I am proud to be part of that team, and I know the industry will be happy with the results for sure. But thanks for the question.
Sure. I'm going to throw the next one to Dr. Chalik before we get into questions from the group. But, I think one of the most common inquiries we get from individuals and organizations is this truly an autonomous organization? And, we're at arm's length from the government. And there was a little bit of discussion about that with the minister. But David, in your estimation, how arm's length truly is Ardar going to be?
Okay, thank you. It's important, I think, and I have experience in this realm as I'm chair of ALMA for 6 years, and that certainly wasn't nearly as arm's length. For the folks who are on the call, if you look at our bylaws, and we're being incorporated in the federal not-for-profit framework, and our consultant, Adrienne Wohler, I have problems with her. I call her Jean, and I call Tom Steve. That's a bit of a problem, but I only do that when I'm nervous. We really are formulating the board in that way, and the organization. We're in about the 12th turn, and we've basically got the funding agreement in place. And I can tell you that we have, and I'd say this if the minister was on, we have really had serious discussions about some of the what we thought were constraints or which minimized our autonomy that were perhaps commonly accepted by government. And we want to be nimble. That's another word besides transparent. We need to be nimble and responsive. And if you look at things like communication, or if you look at things like consultation, or even having folks communicate on social media, that doesn't fit government as we know it, Tom. And so I am satisfied that we are arm's length. We must always remember that there is only one funder, however, and that is government. And with that comes some privilege. One of the privileges that we negotiated, they get to have an observer at our board. But we actually, with some effort, have defined that the chair of the Ardar board can ask that member to leave, a board member, or not participate in camera. So we are very conscious of ensuring that we're arm's length, but still respectful of the minister and the department and the government of the day, because that's where the money comes from.
Okay, fair enough. We're getting a few questions coming in. So here's one that either of you could respond to. So when you see the constituency of the board, there's the impression some sectors of the industry are somewhat underrepresented. Example, food, malting, brewing, even seed companies compared to production business. Given the influence of these players and what they have to the overall agriculture system in Alberta, shouldn't they have had broader representation on Ardar?
Matt, do you want to answer that? I like passing along. I'm an empowering chair.
I will tell the group that we have, had numerous conversations about that. Do we have everybody in the tent? But
well, okay, Matt, you were slow to respond.
Well, I think, yeah, you
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, yes, I think that if you look at our voting members, I mean, we did want it, I guess, for our farmer led. I mean, it's that was the whole idea in the beginning, is to have farmer led research. And so if you look at our 33 voting members out of the advisory committee, that was the opportunity there. But we also have, I'm on the governance committee. There is also opportunity to add to our advisory committee, and so if there was a purpose and a need to add more people to our advisory committee, that certainly can happen. And I haven't heard you yell at me yet, David, so I must have hit it off correctly there.
Sure, I'll just add one thing, and it goes back to governance, Tom. I'd remind whoever asked the question that when a director sits at the board of Ardar, their responsibility really is for the advancement of Ardar, not necessarily their sector. So I would be very hopeful that the wisdom of the membership of the organization elects directors that keep that very much in mind. And there could be broader. I've heard there are complaints that there aren't enough directors from the north too. You'll never satisfy everybody, but get bright directors that are on the board for the right reason.
yeah, a related question here, and I know the answer to it, but I'll ask you guys to weigh in on it. Are all of Ardar's Class A voting members comprised of checkoff levy funded farm organizations?
No,
and I know that's not the case, but
yeah, that's not the case. I mean, the marketing boards and commissions certainly are, but the industry associations and the applied research entities are not levy based.
okay. Could Dr. Chalik provide a breakdown of what the $37 million a year can be allocated to? Is it primarily to fund incoming research proposals, or is it also being used for ongoing operational expenses of Ardar on items such as staff salaries?
Okay, good question. I did point out that we have negotiated funding from CAP for what is hoped to be 3 years at $2 million a year. It may not all be used, but for the standing up of the organization and the administrative costs to not eat away at the 37 million. From the 37 million, there are funds that are committed already. There's no question about that, because our responsibility is to have a smooth transition with no gaps. Obviously, there are research projects that are ongoing in their second and third year, so there is committed funding. However, there is funding that we would call, if you wanted to call it free cash flow, or funding that's not committed, that will be a smaller amount this year because we're almost through the year. We're already in December and year end is March 31st. But the good thing that was done for the first 3 years of our being is that the government funded a bunch of these entities that the minister talked about early on, that doesn't come out of the 37 million. Now, I will say at the end of that 3 years, we're going to be faced with some serious decisions, and I'm glad Stuart Callum is looking at other sources of funding to leverage what we will be looking at with them. But All of the 37 million is not available for us to do calls, that's for sure, but there will be a significant amount, and we want to make sure that it's all used, especially the cap funding.
Okay. Well, this is actually just a comment. As a researcher, we'd just like to thank Ardar for using the Alberta Funding Consortium, or the Agriculture Funding Consortium, so we are able to respond nimbly to the call. So many of you on this call will be familiar with the Agriculture Funding Consortium, and certainly Ardar is plugged into that process. And we do have our own separate call that is ongoing now. So are there additional questions from the group? Looks like not. Matt or David, do you have any closing remarks that you would like to make to the group?
Well, I've done the majority of speaking, which Tom tries to control that. I want to pass it over to Matt to make. Matt, you make the final comments, please.
Okay. Yeah, well, the final comment for me would be just that the learning process and the speed of which that we are able to put this together, and the team that is awaiting these research proposals and the future work that's going to happen at Ardar. I'm very proud of the work and the team that's in place. And as I said earlier, anytime you embark on a situation or program like this, you just never know exactly what you're going to get into. And the people that I've met and worked with very closely over the last 8 months, I've really enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the legacy that Ardar will be in the future.
Just one thing, Tom. I do want to thank your board chairs for the wisdom of hiring Tom. He serves you very well. And I'm sure that you have no issues when you look at his performance. The guy has incredible work ethic and is a pleasure to work with, as are the staff. I met some of your staff up at the barley breeding field day that was well organized right in the middle of COVID. So you can be proud of the commissions that you are chair of.
Oh, gee, thanks.
You're welcome. You can pay me later.
So actually, I think we're running a little bit ahead of schedule, and the Alberta Barley AGM is up next, but I'm wondering if we should just take like a 5-minute break and transition into that. Megan, give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think we can take like a couple minutes of break and come back and reconvene at 3:15 for the start of the AGM.
That would be great.
Yep.
David, Dave Bishop, did you have some comments you were going to make?
Well, yeah, I just said that was thanks everybody for participating, especially the speakers here for their director and delegate session, and everybody that's on this call right now are quite welcome to stay for the AGM portion. So just because we're moving into the AGM doesn't mean you have to drop off the call. Everybody is welcome to participate. Well, to stay tuned to see what happens at our AGM with what's going on with Alberta Barley. So, and with that, I think we should take a nature break till about 3:15. I think everybody would be happy with that.
Okay. Thanks to everybody.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Thank you for having us. Bye for now.
It's a Zoom marathon.
Yeah. This isn't the long one. They've had longer.
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
I know. So anyway, so we should, while we were doing our, let's see if this will show up. Yeah, it's not going to show up very good. I'm now a granduncle. It just happened. So my nephew and his wife just had a baby. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well,
Yeah.
Aaron Tateson became an auntie on the weekend, and
Oh.
yeah, she just sent me a picture of it, of the little girl this morning.
Yeah.
And I was looking at her mom, and I was thinking, like, that's Aaron. They look
very
a
much
lot alike. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, it's been quite exciting because it's their first, my sister's first grandchild, and so that's the next generation has started. So
yeah,
continue on. So
It is 3:15. So do we
Is
want
it?
to?
Sure.
yeah, let's roll.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, everything ready, Megan?
We are golden. Yeah.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Alberta Barley's 2020 annual general meeting. Unfortunately, it's on Zoom and not in person, but that's the conditions that we've got for today. My name is Dave Bishop, and for all of you that don't know, I'm Alberta Barley's chair, and I farm in the Barrens area of southern Alberta. We wish we could be in person, like I mentioned for AGM today, but as we know, it's best for our safety and for our commission staff, the directors, the delegates, and all the industry partners to have these meetings virtually now. But we hope to see you all in person in the future. For those who have just joined us for the AGM portion, I'd like to walk you through a couple of buttons and ways for you to communicate with us. First, if you'd like to ask a question, please use the Q&A button or the chat function located at the bottom of your screen. Our online moderators will interject or leave them until the end of the presentation to be answered. Before I call this meeting to order, I would like to acknowledge a number of special guests and industry partners that we have at the meeting today. We have Kevin Seach from Ardar Malting, Pan Ragochney from Manitoba Crop Alliance, Aaron Armstrong from the Barley Council of Canada, Mark McNaughton from Alberta Ag and Forestry, and Brent McEwen and Ruben Jose from the Marketing Council. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order at 3:17 p.m. Our business meeting agenda is included in your delegate package that you received in your email this morning. As we go through the business portion of the meeting, I would like our guests to know that only our directors and delegates can vote during this part of the meeting. Anyone who is a director or delegate can raise their hand, a button located at the bottom of your screen to move, second, approve, or oppose during voting. At this time, I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So it looks like we have Doug Robertson moving that.
Thank you, Doug. We have a seconder, Megan?
Trevor Peterson.
Thank you, Trevor. At this time, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? I saw Wade's hand up.
Yep. So we have 27 counted for that.
Okay. Any opposed?
I am not seeing any.
Okay, then I will call the motion carried. Our first item of business is to review the minutes from our 2019 AGM. You should have received these minutes in your package as well, and I'm sure every one of you read it in from word for word. So at this time, I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes as they were presented.
We have Brent Constable and Jeff Nielsen seconding.
Thank you. This time, I'll take a moment to ask, is there any discussion on the minutes? Anybody have anything out of the minutes they'd like to discuss? Are you seeing anything, Megan?
None.
Okay, so I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
27 again.
Okay, thank you. Opposed?
Seeing none.
Okay, I'll call the motion carried. Up next on the agenda is the chair's report. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for coming to Alberta's Barley's AGM. I'll make a few short comments about the Commission's activities from the past year. Then I'll play a video where you'll hear from our management team on some of the major initiatives that they have led this year on behalf of the farmers. First, I'd like to briefly touch on where we are with the potential amalgamation with the Alberta Wheat Commission and Alberta Barley. In the directors and delegates session earlier, many of you heard about the next steps and the process that we are taking to progress this forward. But now I'd quickly like to highlight the work our subcommittee and management team completed in the past year to get solid footing where we're going to be moving forward. To give you a bit of context, in late January 2020, an amalgamation subcommittee was formed consisting of an equal number of representatives from Alberta Barley and the Alberta Wheat Commission. The subcommittee includes a blend of directors, delegates, and regional reps. The subcommittee has held 3 meetings in the past year, one in March, the second in October, and the third in November. We have a 4th meeting scheduled for next week where we will begin to look at potential models a new governance and operating structure might look like. So far, the committee has adopted the terms of reference, requested management to examine other models of the multi-commodity commissions that are out there today and explore the potential benefits and risks associated with the merger and developing the next steps. As part of the subcommittee, I'm impressed with the dialogue and constructive input all the members of the subcommittee have brought forward. I would also look forward to the future meetings with this group because so far I think we've been doing a pretty good job, actually a very good job. It's not an easy task, so I'm kind of looking forward to see where we get after next week's meeting. These are just a couple of the highlights about amalgamation. During the resolution section of the agenda, you will hear more robust update from Neil Gorda about amalgamation, and that's who is Alberta Barley's resolution chair. Before we play the video, I did want to emphasize how proud I am of how Alberta Barley has performed in 2020. Despite a year of COVID-19 and numerous challenges, Alberta Barley's programming grew with no impact to operations. You guys did a fantastic job. This year, our economy and extension program managed to take on a life of its own with the addition of taking over the production of the Blue Book, along with agronomy update. Those are 2 important items that we wanted to make sure were continued for the future. And the agronomy update has been a long-standing industry event. We didn't want to see it disappear. Our policy program launched the Fusarium Head Blight website called Let's Manage It. And in our market development efforts, we saw improvements to rail transportation despite being in the middle of a global pandemic amid a major surge in demand for barley exports was a large reason for that. A lot of barley is going export. It's great to see. I'm extremely proud of this team and how well they've managed to pivot and adjust under unique circumstances and continue to advocate and work on behalf of farmers. A big thank you to my fellow board members who are instrumental in guiding our management team. Without you, this is not possible. So with that, I'd like to cue the video, please, Megan.
I think in a word, resiliency is really how I would describe the past year for the Alberta Wheat and Barley Commissions, both from a producer perspective and our staff.
The thing that has really impressed me the most is the fact how well the staff and management have adapted to the conditions. They're tough conditions. You know, people are having to work from home more than they used to. And so, you know, it's the interaction in the office isn't quite one-on-one because you're not there all the time.
It showed the resilience of our office staff and our team to be able to maneuver quickly to the home environment and with getting the technical pieces in place to make that system work.
The Alberta Wheat and Barley Commissions have been involved in a number of different regulatory consultation processes, including the red tape reduction panel consultations that were held with a group of agricultural stakeholders very early on in the year. Regulatory changes to Fusarium head blight were one of the outcomes of these meetings. The Alberta Wheat and Barley Commissions had brought this issue to the attention of the government from day one, since it was a resolution that was brought forward at the Alberta Wheat 2017 AGM. As such, this year we launched a new website, managedfhb.ca, which is meant to serve as a portal for all things Fusarium management in the province and a guide for farmers.
In November of 2019, the Alberta Wheat Commission again collaborated with Cereals Canada to go internationally and promote the new wheat crop. There were some concerns from international buyers given the difficulty of the 2019 harvest, and it was essential that farmers were there able to answer questions directly from our international buyers about potential quality concerns. Our members were able to reassure those concerns and to continue to promote Canadian wheat as a safe, high-quality crop.
Right away from day one, when we got into a lockdown situation, we adjusted very quickly. We had to make representations to government on the things that were priorities on our list, one of which was declaring agriculture as an essential service.
At the height of the pandemic, the Commission spearheaded a weekly e-newsletter called the COVID-19 Impact Analysis for Farmers. So we sent these out every Monday morning, and ultimately it was to keep farmers apprised of the ongoing situation and the changes that could be impacting their operations. The weekly newsletter consisted of updates on provincial and federal government relief programs, PPE shortages, and also market updates on farmers' commodities. Our updates received a great deal of attention from both mainstream media, industry stakeholders, and our farmer audience due to the timeliness of the releases and the reader-friendly format. Make sure you don't miss any other Commission updates. Go to our websites at albertawheat.com or albertabarley.com and click subscribe. This past year saw a federal election. Our policy team worked to inform farmers of the agricultural platforms of all of the key parties. We worked to make sure that all of the parties and the candidates were well informed of the key priorities of Western Canadian farmers.
The 2019 harvest was extremely difficult for grain transportation. Delays in the harvest itself were followed by union issues that added further delays, followed by the protests, which disrupted a significant amount of the rail system. The Commission's responded to the growing grain backlog through public awareness, through media, and advocacy through government.
So along with our sister commissions in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, under the banner of the Canadian Wheat Research Coalition and the Canadian Barley Research Coalition, we finalized 4 core breeding agreements with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada and the University of Saskatchewan. Further negotiations are ongoing with the Universities of Alberta and the University of Manitoba. In March of 2020, results-driven agriculture research, otherwise known as Ardar, was formed as an arm's-length funder for the provincial government.
We have developed protocols and procedures in conjunction with Ardar, so they continue to seamlessly operate, and we continue to be in compliance as required with the grant commitment given to Alberta Barley Commission by Ag and Forestry.
Going into the spring season, we recognized that we needed to develop new tools to communicate with farmers, and that in the main they would be virtual tools. We developed the in-the-field webinars, for example, to get timely information out to farmers during the growing season. That worked extremely well. We adapted the Malt Academy, which is a training program that we operate for farmers to better understand markets, and we went virtual with that.
This year, our events team helped the extension team put on 2 in-person field days, Lacombe Field Day and Wheatstock. We also helped put on a virtual Malt Academy for our markets department and Chops and Crops for our government relations counterparts.
The Alberta Wheat Commission received a CAP grant to produce the crop protection guide for Alberta with our partners, Alberta Barley, Alberta Pulse, and Alberta Canola. The crop protection guide, or the Blue Book, will be released at the same time, in the same format, and have the same valuable information that farmers and agronomists have come to expect.
Just that very important resource when you have that quick question on product and usage, weather, mixing, all kinds of things, and you look up very quickly. We have the ability to add in new pieces of resource. So look forward to the Blue Book, new and improved in the future.
Our agronomy extension platform really excelled this year, as we were able to offer digital content, including webinars, newsletters, and podcasts, in a year when extension programming was really limited in this space.
It's something that we have always been wanting to do, and we finally have had the resources to do it. The fact that we can actually have an agronomist on staff, he's non-partisan, and so the fact that he is there for the farmer is great.
Well, the Growing Point is really popular, and then the new format, podcast, it's so important that we're in that space as farmers are tuning in more and more in with that kind of material in their tractor, in their trucks, and on any time. So and it's timely information.
We had a pilot project called Plot to Farm for on-farm agronomy and research. It's something we're looking at and encouraging, and probably in the future will be becoming more available to all producers to do their own on-farm research. It's important to not just have research done through other associations, but to have it done right on your farm, because it's important to see what happens on your own farm.
So last year's Prairie Cereal Summit was held in the Fairmont Banff Springs from December 11th to 12th and featured Alberta Barley's annual general meeting, a full conference agenda, and a fun pub tour of downtown Banff. It was a huge success with almost 300 participants. Full conference day agenda featured our keynote speaker, the Honorable Stockwell Day, Danielle Smith, Ted Menzies, and a green transportation panel with Fiona Murray from CN Rail.
So Alberta Barley and Alberta Wheat Commission's board formed a subcommittee to analyze the potential merger of the governance models of both Alberta Barley and Alberta Wheat Commissions. So we've hired a consultant to actually develop a roadmap to analyze the future phase of a merger. And we will determine that by ensuring that we continue to provide value to our producers by conducting value proposition analysis, risk management analysis, and of course the financial and legal implications that could have on the governance, both structures, both commissions. So we have conducted an extensive process that started back in November 2018 to review the strategic priorities, the Alberta Wheat Commission operating plan, and the key objectives, while keeping in mind that we continue to provide ultimate value to our stakeholders. We've also developed an investment framework that is directly linked to these strategic priorities and will continue to support the department work plans for the next 5 years. As part of the strategic plan, we have developed key performance indicators to measure the performance and the value proposition for our producers.
Grains West provided a COVID-19 farm diary in which farmer and seed grower Sarah Hoffman wrote a 4-part series on how the pandemic was affecting her farming operation. 3 key feature stories were written, the first of which, COVID-19 and the grain flow. This was the port perspective and how grain flow shipments were affected in the Port of Vancouver. It's never like this, how Canadian pasta operations ramped up to meet the needs of a pandemic. PPE, MIA, the scarcity of protective equipment for farmers. Now, Companion Piece podcast was also produced to cover this important subject matter. To read these stories and listen to our podcast episode, go to grainswest.com.
We see agriculture being on the forefront of the economic recovery in the province, and I think that's an area where farmers have proven that they can get back up and running in a normal fashion almost immediately. When you think of what they went through in terms of the 2019 harvest from L, there were some farmers still harvesting crops in April and May of this year, and yet they still managed to pull off an excellent crop, and that economic activity filters throughout the rural economy.
Yeah, what a great video. It really showcases all the work both commissions completed in the past year on behalf of all our farmers. To start things off, I'd like to introduce the current board of directors for Alberta Barley for 2020. We have Jeff Nielsen, Director for Region 1, Tara Sawyer, Director at Large, Dick Baenga, Director of Region 3, Wade McAllister, Director at Large and Vice Chair, Neil Gorda, Director of Region 4, Terry James, Director at Large, Shane DeBach, Director for Region 5, Brent Constable, Director of Region 6, and of course myself, Dave Bishop, Director from Region 1 and Chair. Now we'll move on to committees. Now at this time, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge our committees listed on the following slides. Here we have a list of members of our Governance and Finance Committee. These are the people who ensure we provide oversight to the financial affairs of the Commission, including reviewing our quarterly financials and our annual budget and audit process, as well as ensuring we maintain a solid corporate governance platform. Up next is the Markets Committee. This committee works on strengthening end users for Alberta grown barley for both malt and feed uses. It also provides oversight on market access and trade issues, as well as grain transportation and grain handling. Next slide, please. Next is the research committee that reviews research funding proposals and provides input into our overall research policy. In addition to staff, director, and delegate members that you see on the screen, this committee is rounded out with associate members from industry, which include Dr. Rich Joy from Canada Malting and Karen Schmid from Alberta Beef Producers. We also have a policy committee. This committee works on the behalf of directors and delegates to determine priorities and policy issues on which can have a positive impact on our industry. Here are the members of our Communication Committee, the group behind Alberta Barley's external voice, from the Grain Exchange newsletter to events, press releases, media coverage, annual reports, branding, among other functions. We also have a resolutions committee, and we'll hear from Neil Gorda, the committee's chair, on resolutions that came out of this year's regional meetings. These committees have direct farmer feedback to the board, which helps shape Alberta Barley's programs and activities. This process is critical to our success, and my thanks go out to all of you. Before closing, I would like to thank my fellow board members for an outstanding year. And like I said before, without you, this would not be possible. You know, it's been great, I tell you that. The success of our organization would not be possible without the dedication and steadfast commitment of you, the directors, and our delegates. These members actively work to represent all of Alberta barley farmers. Now, on to the business of the day. I'd now like to ask Tom Steve to present the General Manager's report. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dave. And I know that many of us would prefer to be in the Rundle Lounge or at Wild Bill's in Banff, but we're here online, and we appreciate everybody's patience. I think, you know, we had an excellent director and delegate session, and we appreciate those that are still on the line. We've got a good group together. So you heard it a few times in the video that resiliency is the one word that best sums up the past year for Alberta barley producers. And I'm just looking for my PowerPoint to come up on the screen. Yeah, so we had the harvest from hell. I said that a few times in the video, and saying it again. But that was followed by rail blockades, followed by COVID-19. So I'm not going to dwell on that. But and again, you saw it in the video. What I'm most proud of is the fact that we were able to maintain a high level of service to our Alberta farmers in the face of the pandemic, and in many cases, take a leadership role amongst crop commissions in Alberta, and for that matter in Canada. Ironically, COVID-19 played a major role in helping grain movement return to normal, because the railways saw their other business lines decline sharply. And that allowed grain to move at a record pace throughout the spring and summer, and even into the harvest period of 2020. And I know many of you are experiencing that. The one point I would like to make is that we do have concerns about the railway's ability to meet demand for rail cars over the coming winter months. And we've been monitoring that on a weekly basis through our own contacts and also through the Ag Transport Coalition. There are a few storm clouds there, and we don't want to set off too many alarm bells, but it is definitely a concern. the highlights when I look back on 2019-20, and many of them have again been covered in the video. The 2 core breeding agreements with Ag Canada and the University of Saskatchewan, and both on the barley side and on the wheat side. You know, those 2 programs that you're looking at on the screen are responsible for the overwhelming majority of barley varieties that you grow on your farms. So, you know, over the course of time, Copeland, Metcalf, Synergy, Bow, Connect, and a few others that are sort of in the emerging category. But, you know, we're funding those programs. Our involvement in the development of Ardar has been documented in the previous session, and you know, we're quite proud of that fact. And I think the one thing you see on the slide there is that the Alberta Barley Commission administered the $2 million startup grant for Ardar, and credit to our Chief Operating Officer, Saida Karam, and her team for taking that on. I guess I feel no hesitation in stepping up to do these things when I know that we have a team behind us that can execute on these projects. So we volunteered for that, and it's done. We've essentially turned the money now back to the Alberta government, or sorry, to Ardar, because the company is up and running, and so they no longer need our help, but they did need our help in the early stages. So again, other highlights during the course of the year included our hosting of both live and virtual events. You know, we tried our best to do live events such as the Lacombe Field Day, Wheat Stock up in the Peace, but we also moved onto the online platform relatively quickly, and I think executed again on that very effectively. Thanks to our communications team, our events team, thanks to our research team, to everybody for stepping up. You know, and I think we're all dealing with, you know, what is our productivity level when we're sitting in front of our dining room, at our dining room table at home, and you know, we've struggled with that off and on over the course of the year. We were up to about half of the staff in the office until about 2 weeks ago, you know, and now we're going to be going into a lockdown situation again, where we're being told to stay home. So kudos to the staff in terms of being able to adjust to those realities. Another, I guess, item during the course of the year that I've been really proud of is the Farm Cash Advance Program, which is an Alberta Wheat Commission initiative primarily, but certainly the Alberta Barley Commission has been a major advocate for that program. And the way that our staff functions, our breakdown that inevitably staff that are shared are working on this program, and it's we started it in the fall of 2018, and it's really blossomed. And so I just wanted to show a brief video to give you an indication what we're the direction we're going with Farm Cash in terms of the go forward plan. So cue the video.
this was a tool that enabled me to buy my crop inputs in late fall, December, at usually a discounted pricing. And so it made that step extremely easy and allowed us to hang on to our commodities. And then when the pricing was what we felt was right, we were able to sell them at different times than having to sell them early, or borrow from perhaps some of the farm suppliers, and to pay for our crop inputs for the following year. And so that was a real nice tool for us to use to do that.
So our experience with the application process was really simple and easy. It's online form, everything is done remotely. You just input the information that they need. It's all information that you're kind of getting together anyways as you're planning for your year. And the team is very responsive and really available at any time if there's any questions to help us through the process. It was really fast.
Well, with the Farm Cash Advance program, it allows me to acquire inputs before my year ends. I also use it as a bridge gap. If I didn't make a grain sale, at least I have the money from the farm cash to satisfy the needs of the bank, and try to time some marketing and try to hit the 25% in the market like everyone wants to for cash sales.
And having it in a timely manner just ensures we can seed the proper crop. We can get the inputs we need, we can get the spray we need, the fertilizer. We can have everything arranged in a timely manner in the ground and actually make money.
So the ability to extract the value from the grain we've invested in before it's off the field is really beneficial. It's that money up front to allow us the flexibility to run our operation without having to pay any interest. It's just a fantastic opportunity for us, as young producers, especially when we carry a lot of risk and we have a lot of uncertainties with things we can't control, to just have farm cash kind of on our team to allow us to operate and save money.
Okay, so thanks for watching that video, and you obviously saw Brian and Carmen Sewell in that production, who are very familiar to us. I think we've covered the discussion around the amalgamation, and actually Neil will have a further update on that in the resolutions portion of the meeting. But before I turn the meeting over to our auditor, James Melnick, actually I'm going to turn it over to Dave, and Dave will turn it over to James. I just wanted to say a few words about our outgoing directors, and you see them on the screen. So Terry James from the Lavoie area has provided sage advice to this board during his term of office. He's a real student of history, which is always valuable when you're trying to figure out what the path forward is. Unfortunately, I closed the UGG elevator in Bakerville, which I'm sure Terry probably delivered into at some point during his farming career, but hopefully he doesn't hold that against me. But Terry has chaired the various committees of the Alberta Barley Commission, most recently the Policy Committee, which is pretty crucial, and the Research Committee. And he also serves on the Western Grains Research Foundation, which is sometimes a challenging task. So thank you, Terry. Jeff Nielsen, I have known since about 1999, when I was a member services coordinator for United Grain Growers, and he was elected to the board of UGG at a meeting annual members meeting, I believe, at the Fantasyland Hotel in Edmonton. And I've worked with Jeff off and on over the years. He took one for the team by becoming a director of the Canadian Wheat Board, which he resigned from, but eventually we fixed the wheat board. So, but I think his crowning achievement has been his work with Grain Growers of Canada. He's now terming out from that responsibility as well. But GGC is a much stronger organization, really, since Jeff's been involved in, and we've more or less rescued GGC from a near-death experience. Dave Bishop and I and Ted Menzies were all born at the old Claresholm Hospital. And it's been a pleasure getting to know Dave over the last few years and working with him, and his leadership has to the industry has been immeasurable. Not only Alberta Barley, but he's a delegate with Alberta Wheat. He's going to continue to be a delegate with Alberta Barley and the Alberta Seed Processors and the Canadian Seed Trade Association. So, you know, Dave has made a tremendous mark on the industry, and he continues to be on the Canadian National Railway Advisory Council, and we're continuing to provide advice to him on that. So I just wanted to thank those three outgoing directors. We're obviously going to be welcoming the new directors later today, but just to make a few comments on those guys. So that's all I had to say. With that, I'm going to pass the torch back to Dave.
Well, thanks, Tom. You know, it's not just us outgoing directors and our current board, you know, yourself and the staff, you know, if it wasn't for your leadership there, and, you know, for Alberta Barley, Alberta Wheat, and just farmers as general, you know, I'm going to take this moment to thank you for all the work you do, because you're one very busy man with all the jobs that you can't seem to say no very often, can you? So I'd like to thank you for that. So now I guess it's time we should continue this. We'll move on to the financials. It's enough of this mushy stuff. So anyway, Alberta Barley's annual report was recently mailed out to our directors and delegates, and the audited financial statements are included in your producer packages. With us today is James Melnick of Meyer Norris Penny. James is a partner and business advisor with MNP's Private Enterprise Group. He has over 20 years of experience in both public practice and industry. James has extensive experience conducting audit engagements for a variety of clients, including private enterprises, governmental organizations, charities, and not-for-profit organizations. He has instructed courses on accounting and assurance standard updates, cash flow management, and participates in internal quality control reviews within the firm. He will now walk us through the financial statements and the auditor report. With that, I will turn the meeting over to James.
Thank you. Every year I think I forget that I should send over a less self-aggrandizing introduction about myself. I forget till I hear it again. So I'm going to go through, and I hope I have control of the slides here. Yep, there we go. Couple things here. First of all, some comments on the overall audited financial statements, and then I'll conclude with some overall comments on the 2020 audit. So as Dave had mentioned, the financial statements are distributed in the annual report. I'm just going to comment on a summarized version here attached to these slides. At year end, the Commission had total assets of $4.28 million. These are broken out into two funds. The operating fund is the general day-to-day operations of the Commission. The restricted fund are assets and liabilities, or revenues and expenses set aside for specific purposes, often associated with specific granting agreements. So the operating fund had $3.9 million of assets, including just about $1.5 million of cash, $490,000 of short-term investments, which will mature in fiscal 2021. Accounts receivable of $606,000, the large majority of that, of which is checkoff fees receivable. Some prepaid expenses, capital assets There were about $14,000 of capital expenditures this year, bringing the total in the operating fund up to about $92,000. And long-term investments, which mature between the end of fiscal 2021 and December of 2023, all the investments, both the short-term and long-term investments, are held in secure corporate bonds, bearing market interest rates of about 1.5 to 3.2%. The restricted fund had $280,000 of cash related to the farmer-led research grant program and $17,000 of capital assets. On the liability side, total liabilities at year end were $2.7 million, of which $2.367 million were in the operating fund and $352,000 were in the restricted fund. The largest component of liabilities is checkoff fees, which have not yet been recognized as revenue, as the Commission doesn't recognize them until the 6-month refund period expires. That totaled $1.56 million. There was $806,000 of accounts payable, including trade payables, year-end payroll accruals, and other commitments that the Commission has. In the restricted fund, there were $31,000 of minor grant commitments, $280,000 of farmer-led research grant funding, which had been received but not yet expended, so it's recorded as deferred revenue. And then others, old deferred revenue related to the Shochu project, which is slowly being amortized, to $41,000. Total equity of the Commission at year end was $1.562 million. Of this, $1.6 million is unrestricted operating fund equity, and there's a small deficit in the restricted fund of $55,000. With respect to the income statement, total revenue this year was $3,098,000. The largest component of this is checkoff fees of $2.5 million. Farmer-led research grant funding of $320,000, sponsorship for last year's summit of $60,000, Grains West revenue of $87,000, and database licensing revenue of $46,000. On the expenditure side, total expenses were $2.7 million, of which $2.39 million were in the operating fund and $320,000 were in the restricted fund. The largest components of expenditures are research expenses, salaries and benefits, general and admin costs, costs related to the farmer-led research grant funding, and communications expenses. Total other items included on the income statement were investment income of $70,000, as well as BCC, Barley Council of Canada, contributions of $126,000. Total net income this year for the Commission was $330,000, of which $320,000 was in the operating fund and $10,000 was in the restricted fund. So overall, a fairly good result for the Commission this year. As auditor, we also want to just have some concluding comments with respect to the overall audit. It was a different year for most of our clients, and the Commission was no different. One of our main concerns as auditors was to ensure that processes and procedures were maintained over the course of the COVID shutdown, and we were pleased to see that the procedures that we expected to see in place that the Commission had become accustomed to continue to be maintained over the course of the fiscal year. We had no issues with respect to our audit. All the information was provided to us on a complete and timely basis. The controls and processes are working as we expect them to see. And as such, we're able to issue an opinion which says, other than the fact that there's a standard qualification for not-for-profit organizations, these financial statements are a fair representation for the 2020 fiscal year. So I'll turn the meeting back over to you, Dave. And thank you. Oh, I think you're on mute.
There we go. Now everyone can hear me. It's probably better when you couldn't hear me anyway, but thank you, James. As usual, very good job. I'd like to open the floor for questions related to the financials at this time.
Dave, I'm not seeing any.
Oh.
Oh, Scott Keller does have one. It is Alberta Barley spends 20% of his revenue on research. Meanwhile, Alberta Wheat spends 45% of its revenue on research. Is the current agreement between the two commissions of splitting operational costs fair?
Well, I guess it's kind of related to the business operations, not as much for the financials, but I can't speak for what percentage, if that's right for wheat or not, but as far as barley goes, yeah, I'd have to say, is that the right amount, James, percentage wise? Looking at
Well,
the
that percentage is correct. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's what it is. So your question was, are we going to be able to spend any more if we amalgamate? I can't answer that because that's for the future to look at. So, and it's always been an issue with trying to get more money into research in Alberta barley because of the fact that, you know, we're not a huge crop, we're not small crop, but we're not as big as some of the other crops are. So we do not have the resources to spend as much on research as we'd like. We always strive to spend more, but we don't always achieve that. So you have anything you want to add to that, Tom?
Well, I think it's a valid conversation for us to have in terms of the amalgamation proposal. So when we look at other groups like Grain Farmers of Ontario, Quebec Grain Producers, Manitoba Crop Alliance, they operate with single budgets. So the research priorities are based on merit, not on proportion of crop necessarily. And I think that's kind of the nub of the issue. If, you know, obviously Alberta Wheat Commission checkoff revenues are much higher than Alberta Barley. We do have a bigger slippage rate in barley, which Scott has pointed out to us, and which, you know, we have a mandate to look into that. But, you know, if you have a single organization, you can make decisions that are more related to the value proposition to farmers who grow all of those crops, as opposed to strictly adhering to how much checkoff revenue you have. And in the case of Alberta Barley, we have a limited amount of funds that we can allocate to research. With Alberta Wheat, we have a significantly higher percentage of funds that we can contribute. So is it fair? Again, I can't judge that, but that's why we're having the amalgamation discussion.
Yeah, that's right, Tommy. I mean, it's at the end of the day, you know, it'll be whether it's done as merit-based or percentage-based, that hasn't been decided yet, Scott. I think, you know, a lot of the other organizations that we looked at, like Tom mentioned, they go on one budget, so it's all merit-based. So they're not saying 60% wheat, 40% barley, or there could be an organization with soybeans. They're not splitting it up that way. They're splitting it up on merit-based. And that's something we're discussing, as you know, as amalgamation committee, but there has been no decision made on how we're going to do that at this time.
Dave, there is another question here. With the issues surrounding FCDC funding has been down in recent years, hopefully Alberta Barley will increase the funding to FCDC in the future. So I guess, do you think that that's a possibility in the future?
Oh, we're always looking at that. Yeah, of course it's a possibility. And like I mentioned earlier, we're always trying to strive, ways to become more efficient so we can put more money into research. That's always been one of the issues we've always had with Alberta Barley is the limited amount of finances we have, that we cannot put as much into research as we'd really like to. But, you know, and the flip side of that is we do a lot more on policy advocacy and so forth that you know, that a lot of the other barley commissions just don't do it this time. So we kind of hold the barley bucket up nationally more than a lot of the other organizations. So some of that funding goes into that where we feel that is also very important. So
those are all the questions I see at this moment in time.
Okay. If we're seeing no more questions, I guess this time I'd like to have a motion to approve the financial statements as presented.
We have Dick Wymanga moving and Brent Constable seconding.
Thank you. Now, is there any more discussion? This time I'll call the question. All in favor? Oh, Wade stuck his hand up again.
I have 26.
Okay, thank you. Opposed?
Not seeing any.
Thank you. I'll call the motion carried. Okay, also, well, thank you again, James. At the annual general meeting, we also appoint the auditor for the following year. The Governance and Finance Committee, in consultation with the Board of Directors, recommends that we appoint Meyer Norris Penny as the auditor for the fiscal year 2021. At this point, I'm looking for somebody to move and to appoint Meyer Norris Penny as the auditors for the year 2020-2021.
Looks like Tara Sawyer moved and Roy Newman seconded.
Thank you. Is there any discussion?
Not seeing any.
Okay, thank you. So I'll call the question. All in favor?
I count 26 again.
Thank you. So I'll go all opposed.
Seeing none.
Okay, I'll declare the motion carried. Thank you. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to resolutions. I will now call upon our resolution committee chair, Neil Gorda, to talk about the resolutions that came out of this year's regional meetings. You're up, Neil. Don't be like me and make sure you get it off mute.
Yeah, unmute yourself.
Did we lose Neil?
There you go.
There
okay.
we go.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah,
and
go ahead,
even
Neil.
Though, thank you. Even though we are on the last item of the day, this is by far not the least important. Good day, all. I'm Neil Gorda, Director of Region 4 and Chair of the Resolutions Committee. As Dave mentioned earlier, I will be providing a more robust update on last year's resolution from Region 5, and which was presented at the AGM last year in December. The resolution from Region 5 reads as follows. Whereas Alberta Wheat Commission and Alberta Barley are currently operating with a shared management team and have successfully demonstrated the potential efficiencies and synergies an integrated organization can provide to producers and ensure that producers' levies are used to the greatest benefit. Be it resolved that Alberta Barley complete a comprehensive review of the potential to form a merger, to formally merge the Alberta Wheat Commission and Alberta Barley, and if appropriate, conduct a producer plebiscite to obtain membership approval of a merger. That was moved by Jason Lenz and seconded by Terry Young. And with a robust discussion, that motion was carried. So since that motion was carried, it's up to the management and board to carry out that resolution. As Dave had mentioned, a subcommittee was formed in January of 2020, comprising of an equal number of representatives from Alberta Barley and Alberta Wheat Commissions, with a blend of directors, delegates, and regional representations. This committee has met a total of 3 times to discuss terms of reference and explore the potential benefits and risks to a possible merger. And as you can see on the slide, you will note that some of the key outcomes from the subcommittee's most recent meeting include exploring and reflecting on the potential benefits and risks associated with the merger, developing a governance structure or structure options if a merger is to occur, identify and conducting an analysis of the following items before a final decision can be made. And these are the value proposition to Alberta Wheat and Barley members, that's farmers, legal and financial implications, including due diligence review, marketing of agriculture products, marketing of agriculture acts implications, including requirements maybe for a plebiscite, operational implications, capacity, funding, membership policies, processes, etc., and any other areas that the committee can identify. As for next steps, for the amalgamation, the committee has been tasked with the following: updates to members at Alberta Barley Commission and Alberta Wheat Commission, AGMs, which we are currently doing, and it's going to be an ongoing process. Development of working plans and discussion of options at Alberta Barley and Alberta Wheat Commission board meetings, and that will be in January of 2021. Potential board decisions on go-forward plans, possibly in March or April of 2021. Consultation with members on the amalgamation options in the spring of or summer of 2021. The possibility of a plebiscite timing is to be determined possibly in the fall of 2021. The subcommittee will be holding its fourth meeting in next week, that's December 16th, where they will continue to develop a more detailed work plan, as well as examining some straw dog options related to the governance and operating model of a merged organization. So, that gives you a brief outline, and everything stems as how this will progress. We're hoping that it'll progress sufficiently that we'll have something concrete for next year's AGM, but that remains to be seen. So at this point, I'll open the floor to any questions around this amalgamation process.
Neil, at this time, I'm not seeing any, but perhaps people might have some, and we do have some questions time for at the end of the meeting as well.
Right, because we've discussed this quite extensively right from 1 o'clock on, and I think everybody realizes that this is something that you don't want to rush into. You want to get it right. So I mean, we have to, if you're going to get it right, you just don't rush into it. So if there's any questions later on, please bring them up. So with that, I will move into this year's resolution. So the one resolution we're going to deal with tonight is the one passed in Region 2 on November 18th, which reads as follows. Whereas Region 2 has delegate elections every year, and whereas it would be more beneficial to have more equal number of delegates elected each year. Therefore, be it resolved that Alberta Barley see if there's a way to even out the annual delegate numbers for elections each year. And that was passed at Region 2. So before we can move on to deal with this resolution tonight, I have to have a mover and a seconder for this resolution. So I'll open the floor to a mover to this resolution that I just read.
Doug Robertson moved.
Thank you, Doug. Do we have a seconder?
Sean Gore.
Sean Gore, thank you very much. Okay, so now that we have this moved and second, I will allow the mover and the seconder to speak in favor of this resolution. So, Doug, the floor is yours. Is Doug there?
There we go.
Okay.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, I just, this was just sort of a housekeeping resolution. We talked about in the past about trying to do something about this, and nothing really got done since this is my last kick at the cat here this year anyway, because I'm going off the delegate system here for a little while. I think one year we have like 6, and then the next year we have like 3 or 2 or something like that. So it'd be nice if we get kind of a more even number. I'm not sure why it developed this way, and I'm not sure if it's possible to even the numbers out better, but I think it would be, we've all kind of agreed in the past it would be advantageous to do it, so that's why I proposed it.
All right, very good, thank you. Does the seconder want to add to that, to talk to the motion, to the resolution?
Hello.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
This is Kevin Alker. I seconded the resolution at the regional meeting, and Doug is right. I mean, it's just more efficient if you have an even number of delegates coming on every year, just for transition, ease of transition for the new delegates. Of course, this will be unnecessary if the amalgamation takes place, as there will be a new governance structure that will have to be developed. But in the meantime, I think this is a reasonable thing for Region 2 to pursue.
Correct. Very good. Thank you for that. I mean, if this passes here, we'd probably take this up with all the regions. And I think this is a very easy housekeeping thing that can be done. So we have 2 people that spoke in favor of this resolution. Do we have anybody that wants to speak against this resolution?
So Gordon Tuck raised his hand. I'm just going to give Gordon Tuck the opportunity to speak. 1 second. Gordon, you're able to talk now.
Well, I thought I was voting on that, but yeah, I could see, but like the thing is some of our delegates just keep dropping off, like it's not really expired or their time or anything like that. They just, okay, well, I'm on for so long, I'm quitting now. So it's pretty hard to have an even number all the time.
So Gordon, you were probably just giving more of a point of information. I'll take that. I'll take that as that. Is there anybody else that wants to speak? I'll just open the floor because we seem to not have too much interest in speaking against this or for it. Before I call for the mover to close debate, is there anybody else that wants to speak at this time on this resolution? If not, I'll give the mover the option to close debate. Doug, do you want to do that? Doug, are you on there?
I don't see anything in the chat or any hands raised.
Okay. Okay, so then I'll just ask, are you ready for the question? Just, Dave, put your hand up, say yes. All right, thank you. Okay, I'll call this to a vote. All those in favor of the resolution, please signify. Raise your hand.
We have 27, sorry, 28.
All right, 28, okay. Those opposed, please signify.
Dean and John, are you guys opposed? No, okay. There's no opposed.
Okay, thank you very much. So I declare this resolution passed unanimously. So thank you very much, everyone. And you know what? Just a heads up in the years that we are going to go ahead into 2021. You know, these resolutions are important because they give direction to the board as to which way we want to bring this commission going forward. And these are all very important. So thank you for that. And with that, I will move the podium back to Dave.
Well, thank you, Neil. And by the way, you are not going to get the last word because we're not quite done yet. Anyway, we can head back to our election results. So during this year's nomination period that took place from September through to the end of October, we received nominations for directors in Region 1, 2, and a director at large from Regions 1, 4, 5, or 6, where they're coming from. Following the nomination term, we are pleased to welcome Sean Stanford, who farms near McGrath, to the board as our new Region 1 director. Sean is replacing myself as the director of Region 1 as I have now completed my final term. I'm just about done, guys. And I am pleased to pass the baton to this up-and-comer. For Region 2, the Alberta Barley Board welcomes Roy Newman from the Blackie area, who is taking over for Jess Nielsen's post, who completes his final term on the board also. Welcome, Roy. We also welcome Bernie Clymer from Vegreville to the board as the director at large. Bernie joins the board by acclamation and is taking over for Terry James, who also wrapped up his final term on the board of directors. For Bernie, it is return engagement with Alberta Barley, so we welcome him back. So at this time, I would ask Sean, Roy, and Bernie to introduce themselves using the chat function if they could, please, if they're on.
Maybe they'll get to it by the end of the AGM.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Oh, Sean's there. I figured Sean would be there. He's quick at this new technology. So I can say to everyone here that, you know, I know all three of these people, and they're going to be great assets to Alberta Barley. So look forward to great things out of them. I'm not trying to give them any, you know, get their heads too swelled yet, but they're three great people. So. And before we move on to the delegate election results, I'd like to take some time to thank our outgoing directors for devoting themselves to Alberta Barley for the past 6 years. We are sad to see our government relations guru, Jeff Nielsen, depart from the board this year. He has served with distinction as the president of the Grain Growers of Canada and has helped steer the organization onto the path it is on today. Thank you, Jeff, for all your work, and we look forward to seeing what may lie ahead in your foreign policy career, as you've had a major impact on the industry. So again, thank you, Jeff. Without you, grain growers wouldn't be where they are, like we just said. You're great job there. Finally, I'd like to mention, and there's the picture I just noticed up there. You should look at for Jeff, George Clayton. So finally, I'd like to mention Terry James, our director at large from Vegreville area. Terry has been a steady voice of reason on our board table, and his efforts as chair of the Policy and Research Committee will be greatly missed. Thank you, Terry, for directing these two committees and their challenging portfolios for the next years. And I'd be remiss in not mentioning that he's also on the WGRF board, which is that can be a major undertaking and a bit of a headache at times. So Terry, thank you. And again, I believe that's a George Clayton picture also. So I'd also like to touch on some of our key outgoing delegates, including Kenton Ziegler, Region 2 delegate, John McBain, a delegate from Region 2, Scott Keller, Region 4 delegate, and Gerald Finster, a Region 6 delegate. Thank you all for your support and commitment to Alberta Barley and advising our directors on issues affecting your areas. Thank you. To all of our outgoing directors and delegates, thank you for your hard work and dedication over the years. Now on to the delegate election results. For Region 1, we have Colton Brown and myself who were acclaimed. For Region 2, we have Jeff Nielsen, Doug McBain, Doug Robertson, Glenn Gateman, Jessica Dugdale, and Gordon Ellis. They were elected for delegate positions by acclamation on November 18th. Alberta Barley also had 2 delegate positions open for Region 3. During the Region 3 meeting, Melissa Damani and Harold Haugen were acclaimed as Region 3 delegates. In Region 4, Gordon Tuck was acclaimed as a delegate. We just heard from Gordon. In Region 5, Dean Wiegard was also claimed as a delegate during the November 24th Region 5 meeting. Delegate roles will start following today's AGM. The final item on our agenda is setting the date for next year's meeting. December 8th is the date that makes the most sense with availability from Banff Springs Hotel. And also to ensure that we're not conflicting with other events that are taking place in December, that seems to be the best date. So can I have a motion to approve this date as presented?
Yeah, so we have Tara Sawyer as the mover, Brent Constable as a seconder.
Thank you, Neil. You're too slow. So I think that's all we need. I don't think we need any, I don't think we have to call that question, so. Okay, and I'd like to thank everyone for attending today's meeting and our staff. It's a great AGM again, and board for making this year a success. Even if it is online, I do ask if you have any questions, please insert them into the chat and one of our staff or directors will follow up with you. And I believe we're going to have time at the end to even probably answer them today. Before we adjourn, I'm going to turn the meeting over to our Vice Chair, Wade McAllister, who I believe has a few comments to make.
Hey, thank you, Dave. Yeah, it's sure nice. Would be nice to go down to the Rundle Lounge later and have a drink with all you guys. But hopefully next year we can do the proper farewell.
I plan on having a beer shortly, Wade.
Yeah, no, me too. So today I'd like to take a couple moments to reflect on Dave leaving as a chair. He has been on Alberta Barley board for the past 6 years and has been a leader from the beginning. Dave started with Alberta Barley as a delegate and has been a valuable member to the board table thanks to his firm belief in producer input from commodity groups. In his early years, Dave was a heavy-duty and automotive mechanic graduate of SAIT and was involved with his family's agriculture and automotive dealership in Claresholm until 1998 when it was sold. He began farming in 1986 with his wife, Mary, and her parents near Barrens, just northwest of Lethbridge. They farm dry land and irrigated land and grow barley, wheat, canola, rye, pulses, and forages. Whenever extra hands are needed, their 2 sons, Clinton and Eric, are always there to help. As I mentioned earlier, Dave has been a value leader at the board table. He has been active on many committees, including serving as Alberta Barley's Policy Committee Chair and Market Development Policy Chair. Additionally, Dave served on the CN Rail Advisory Council. He was part of the executive and board member with the Grain Growers of Canada, a board member with CNBTC, Alberta and a Barley representative for the Grains Roundtable, and most recently, an engaged member on Alberta Barley and Alberta Wheat Amalgamation Subcommittee. Dave also held a position of president of the Alberta Seed Produce Processors. He is currently on the board for the Carmen Geese Seed Cleaning Plant and as a member of the Barrens Elk Legion and Agriculture Society. Dave also has a passion for increasing delegate engagement and spearheaded the revamping of Alberta Barley's AGM and directors and delegate session in the format that it is today. Alberta Barley has seen many changes in the past years, including the successful shared management structure and the Alberta Wheat Commission. With the Alberta Wheat Commission, we will see more efforts and better use of our checkoff dollars thanks to his leadership on bringing these visions to life. Dave has been instrumental in getting the proposed amalgamation process off the ground, and we will continue to do our best at conversation going forward. Thanks to Dave's efforts, revitalization vision of Alberta Barley is well on its way. I want to personally thank you, Dave, for being a devoted chair, on an engaged producer and genuine leader. Dave, you will be surely missed, and we look forward to working with you in the future. And we hope that you continue to showcase what it means to be a leader in our agriculture industry. And I'll hand it back to you. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Wade, for those nice comments. You really make it sound like I was super busy, and I as busy as I want to be and as I'm capable of doing, and I really enjoyed trying to move things forward and doing what I'm doing. So if I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't be doing it, and it's been great. And it's people like yourself and the rest of the board, even Neil, though he disappears and comes, it's been a great time. It's been a great board. So I'd like to also thank Alberta Barley and Wheat Commission staff. Without all of your hard work behind the scenes, this job just wouldn't have been such a breeze, and it really has been a breeze. It's been very enjoyable, and you've made it easy. You've made me look good at times when I probably look pretty dumb. So thank you for that. Every single one of the staff is dedicated to our farmers, and it really shows in Alberta Barley's program development. So I'd like to thank the staff again for all you do on behalf of our farmers. And again, I'm going to thank the board of directors. It's all of you that have made an impact on Alberta Barley as you see it today. And I'm proud to have worked for you guys and honored that you let me be chair to lead you down this path. It has been really great. And we've seen some major strides made, and I am in full confidence that with the new board structure, new board that's coming online, and that you'll continue that path forward. So I'd like to thank you again. Finally, on a personal note, I've got to thank my wife, Mary. Without her letting me do this, it wouldn't happen. She's the boss of the farm. In all honesty, she's the leader here, so she makes sure that we get things done. And I'd also got to thank my sons, Clinton and Eric, especially Eric. He lives close by here, so he does a lot of the work when I'm out doing commission business and other stuff. He pulls up the slack and does very well with that. So. And I've always tried to strive to make, changes in the agricultural community to be positive, to make things change in the right way. I firmly believe that, you got to have change. You can't be stagnant. You got to progress and evolve into whatever it's going to be, what the future holds. If you're just staying there, not changing, you're not doing anything, I consider that being very stagnant. And, you're basically at the end of your time if you don't have change. So, all that, I'd like to thank everyone again. It's been a blast, and I wouldn't have missed it for anything. So I think before we move on, is there any questions that came out of the discussion earlier, Megan? Maybe we should do that.
Yes, there is actually. So it's basically, can Dave or anyone else in the committee speak to what happens if the amalgamation isn't the end result, and in terms of how the organizations will work together?
Yeah, I mean, if the end result is, that's one of the things we are looking at as a committee. If, say, everybody decides, no, this isn't going to work, it's not a good idea, we have to have that sitting there as to what the plan will be. What will it hold? Will it be functional to stay the way we are? Do we have to change anything at all? That's something as a committee that we are discussing, and we haven't quite gotten all the way down to that part of it yet, but it will be discussed because it is one option that we have to look at.
So that's the only question that I saw. So unless there's no more questions, I think we can proceed. Oh, wait, one just popped up. So Tara's saying that outgoing delegates, we miss Doug Roberts and Doug Miller. My understanding that Doug Miller is getting appointed by the board, and I thought Doug Robertson was still proceeding as a delegate, but perhaps I'm incorrect on that.
We'll get it clarified. So if they are not going to be delegates, I got to thank them for their work as delegates, and also on the board in the past. Everybody that's on a committee, board, or commission, I hold you to great honor and esteem, because it's something that needs to happen, and it's something that we need to see more of, is more people doing this. It seems to be, I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here, but we seem to recycle everybody a little too often. We need new blood in here, new ideas. So again, thank you guys for being there. Well, Doug Miller said, he's staying on. Is he? Did I read that right?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Staying on. Yeah. So it's just Doug Robertson that's stepping down.
Okay, any more questions?
Well, yeah, we'll clarify that. If Doug Robertson is no longer going to be a delegate, I think we would have to have definitely recognition of his contributions over the years. So
I agree. Yeah, for sure. So that's something we need to clarify and rectify here down the road. So one last call because I'm going to be done.
Dave, if I may, Dave, you know, I mean, you have done a very good job as the chairman, and we all appreciate your efforts and what you have done, but never think that you're not replaceable. But you know, I was your whipping boy, so who's going to be your whipping boy going forward?
Well, there's lots of farm input people around the country that I can work on. Don't worry, Neil. And I can give you a phone call once in a while.
Oh, please do, please do. You don't know where I live yet, so yeah. Anyway,
well, my plan was to come up to your regional, but you canceled it.
Anyways, Dave, take care and be good.
Oh, well, thank you. You know, it's the friendships you make with everybody you meet when you're doing this that really, really, really make it worthwhile. You know, not only do you grow personally, you also, you know, even your farm business grows from this because so much you glean out of what we do. And Neil, you know that too, as directors and so forth, what we glean out of what we're doing here, you know, not only benefits us personally, but it also benefits our farms. Even though, you know, we sometimes, oh, geez, I should be doing something on the farm instead of being at this meeting. At the end of the day, it's also important to all the rest of the farmers that we represent to be doing that.
Well said. Well said.
So again, thank you, everyone. And I guess it's now time to say, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our AGM. So can I please have a motion to adjourn? Oh, I see Neil's hand. And I guess we got the seconder down here. I don't know if we need to have it seconded, but can I have a seconder? Oh, Wade did. So anyway, so with that, I will call this meeting closed and thank you again, everyone.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you all.